Hello everybody, welcome back to True Crime Metrix. It's cross-examination time. Daniel Rashbaum goes up against comms expert. Oh, that's so annoying when that happens. My tab, it played, and it interrupts my thought. Anyway, welcome everybody in the chat. Yeah, we've got the cross-examination of Sergeant Chris Corbett, comms expert. Occupation, comms expert. Occupation at the moment, he's being cross-examined by Daniel Rashbaum. What kind of tricks will Daniel Rashbaum play? I mean, it's kind of laughable, really, because Chris Corbett is so ruled by his craft that it's kind of hard to find anyone that's less biased in this case. He doesn't have an opinion. I doubt he even cares about the administration of justice. Maybe that's not a fair thing to say. But when it comes down to it, he's there to read us the results of his findings, and that is as clean cut as it gets. So any notion that Daniel Rashbaum might play of, you wanted to see things this way, didn't you? You picked that cell tower to be serving my client. It could have been any one of 3 cell towers, but you chose that one. Why is that? Why is that, Sergeant Chris Corbett? And so yeah, he's wearing a better tie today, just blue. I kind of like Daniel Rashbaum's tie. I don't know if it's because of my color corrections. Thank you, Kate Katz H, for the early bird super chat. Early bird gets the coffees. We've just made a coffee. Thank you, everybody, and we will press play on the video now. We've got kind of a fun bit at the beginning of Judge Everett mumbling and making jokes, which I thought I would leave in because I'm sure we will all appreciate that.
Good thing Sonia's here. Nothing ever strange happens in my trials when Sonia's here. All right. Is Miss Kappelman here yet?
She is. She had to run out, but we can go ahead and continue.
Okay. All right. The defense have any argument to raise concerning the transcript?
We do, Your Honor. Your Honor, the transcript that was... Well, let me take a step back. As Your Honor...
Where's Kappelman, huh? She had to run out? What does that mean? She had to run out and take a bribe? Yeah, she's gone to collect a big bundle of cash from the courtroom parking lot. Crooked Kappelman.
Recalls the recording has significant portions that are inaudible.
Correct.
I understand the court's ruling that when there are portions that are audible, the recording can be heard, and we certainly accept that. The difficulty with the transcript is there are so many portions of it that are marked unintelligible. We originally received paper copies of what Mr. McElveen, who is the person who did the enhancement, created.
To that I would say, well, let's just look at the portions that are intelligible and have been transcribed, because I'd be willing to bet that there's enough to build a picture. It's just damning for your client. That's why you don't want it in. This is how it works, right? Yes, there are portions. There are 3 portions of a 2-hour conversation, 3 sentences where we don't know what was said. And that could have been anything.
And the transcript that we received was divided into 2 sections. The first section, which I believe was 38 pages, had the word inaudible appear 121 times. The second transcript, which was 12 pages, had the word inaudible appear 45 times. What the state has now done is they've taken the audio and video of the recording and put it on I'm not sure what, and I don't know what kind of program, and then with the transcript scrolling underneath it. And they've actually excised the word inaudible and replaced inaudible with ellipses and dashes, which can give the jury the impression that what is being said is the most important part, and that everything else doesn't really matter. And in that instance, Your Honor, the transcript becomes the evidence. And that is why we cannot stipulate to its use as a demonstrative aid. Now, we understand that Ms. Magbanawa took the stand yesterday and suggested that she can now attest to its authenticity.
Well, I don't think she suggested. She said it's accurate.
She said it, Your Honor. Now, I think reasonable minds probably can agree that there are some truth-telling issues that Ms. Magbanawa, some of which she admitted to, others she did not. But in her previous trial, when Ms. Dugan played various clips, not the entire recording, but various clips without the transcript of the audio and the video from the Dolce Vita recording, Ms. Magbanawa said repeatedly, I can't hear that, I don't hear that, I didn't hear that. So she's certainly changed what she's had to say. But it remains, Your Honor, that if the transcript is allowed on a recording that has so many portions that are inaudible, Katie Magbanawa cannot be heard virtually at all. Mr. Adelson's statements are often inaudible. If the transcript is allowed to roll with the dashes, with the ellipses, it becomes the evidence. It becomes what the jurors are going to fixate upon. And that is exactly what Martinez said should not happen.
Well, let's take this step by step.
I think the jury are going to focus on the bit that isn't ellipses. I think the jury is going to focus on that bit where in the recording that Charlie is going, if he's going to be a big problem, you have to kill him because this will be done. I mean, Katie, I don't care what I spend. God so help me, if they fuck with my family, it's going to be Nazi shit. I think there'll be, all ears for that portion. The ellipses, they can skip over that. I mean, who really gives a shit? Nazi shit. Let's start there.
Because I believe I want to make sure at least we're all talking about the same thing. There is a actual copy, paper copy of the recording that could be provided.
Your Honor, we received it in discovery. I don't know that that's what the state intends to use.
Then let's clarify that point. Is the state wanting to use, then, a paper transcript that has been prepared and already disclosed, or are you wanting to roll the words under the video itself?
The latter, Your Honor, but it's the same transcript that's been applied to the video for demonstrative purposes.
All right, I believe Ms. Myers has already indicated it's not in fact the same because the portions that would otherwise refer to being...
What's that bulge in your pocket, Kappelman? Is that $100,000 in cash? Have you just met with a councilman outside?
Inaudible in the transcript do not appear the same in the video.
Okay, so we want in the video the word inaudible to appear instead of...
I believe that's what they're suggesting as a part of, or at least part of their objection, because it is not exactly the transcript itself.
Well,
To clarify, Your Honor, I'm not suggesting that. I'm simply using that as a justification for why this shouldn't come in. The transcripts are clear. There's so many portions that are inaudible that the transcripts just shouldn't be used. I don't think under Martinez they're appropriate.
Please don't use the transcripts. Martinez said they weren't appropriate. Listen to what Martinez says.
Ms. Myers, this was why during the evidentiary hearing I specifically asked the question, if Ms. Magbanawa testifies at that point, there is someone who is a direct participant in this conversation who can verify the authenticity of either the recording or any transcript that has been prepared. I'm not sure whether or not you all were expecting her to testify or not. She has testified that it's authentic.
Well, I think given her previous testimony in the last trial, Your Honor, where she said she couldn't hear, these very same statements that were presented to the jury in that case on clips, I think we have a credibility issue at a minimum. I don't know why she's suddenly determined that she can hear everything that's being said. when she couldn't at her trial in 2022.
Am I to determine her past testimony as far as ruling on this specific point?
No, Your Honor, but at a minimum, I think we ought to be entitled to do a voir dire of her to determine what she can hear and what she can't, and why she's suddenly changed.
Very well, Ms. Kappelman, any additional argument?
No, sir. I think her prior statements regarding. No, but I'm going to. Yes. I think her prior statements are not in evidence. I don't recall her being impeached with those prior statements regarding the wire.
Hey, Nicole E., I'm sorry about the trouble you've had with your T-shirt. These guys, it's unbelievable. I really want to do a campaign against them. The company is called Teespring. Do not use them. Nobody use them. They're shit. They haven't paid me. They're supposed to pay me 2.5 months ago. They have not paid me. I wrote to them the other day. They did respond, and they said, we've been having problems, and that they're urgently blah, blah, blah. But every time I write to them, they are giving me the same shit. We are switching. This is why I'm not pushing any merch in the merch store until we are with another company. I do know, Nicole, that another one of our viewers, Cosmic Kitten, had a hoodie that was on order that she paid for, and she was able to obtain a refund through Amazon or her credit card. I'm not sure. But if you send me an email with the details of your order at truecrimemetrics@gmail.com, I will write to them again and mention your order specifically. All I can do is apologize. It's really not my fault. They're supposed to be the fucking main company. A lot of creators use that company for their merchandise, and I have had the worst experience ever. Since November last year, they've been fucking me. So I'm really sorry that you've had a bad experience. So have I. And I would love to start a class action lawsuit against them. So any other creators that are listening that hate Teespring and want to see them burn and their managers in prison, reach out to me at truecrimemetrics@gmail.com.
Opportunity was present during cross-examination. I don't think an additional voir dire is required. I think we have met the standards under Martinez and would ask that we be permitted to use the transcript merely as a demonstrative aid with the cautionary instruction that Your Honor would give.
Well, cautionary instruction definitely will be given as it pertains to this recording since the beginning. I believe the defense has already raised previously up to 30 minutes of the beginning of the recording cannot be heard, so on that basis alone, a cautionary will be given. The other point about the transcript that would potentially be under the video matching what the court reporter has actually prepared, I do believe is a fair one. And it cannot be inaccurate in any way if it's going to be used even as a demonstrative. Ms. Myers?
Just to clarify, I believe in her trial last year, Ms. McManus clips were played. Obviously, we were not there, but I believe, well, we were not arguing. I believe Ms. Dugan presented them to Ms. Nagbanwa and said, did you hear that? What did you mean by that? And Ms. Nagbanwa's response time and time again was, I didn't hear that. So it's
Yeah, but also Miss Magbanwa's response to the question, did you kill Professor Markel, was no, it wasn't me. So her responses aren't exactly what we would call reliable or truthful.
She was given that opportunity. She did testify under oath, but she could not hear it. And that doesn't even account for all of the statements by Ms. Nagbanwa and Mr. Adelson on the recording that cannot be heard. So I think that if the transcript is given as it in the version that the state wants to use, those words become the evidence because those words are the ones that the jury is likely to fixate upon. And then with the ellipses and the dashes, as I said, it does suggest that there's more there, but it doesn't really matter. When in fact, there's more there, but nobody can hear it.
No, Ms. Myers, I am in agreement with you. That part has to be accurate. If it's
Yeah, Nicole, thank you. Just maybe put in the subject, email subject title, big letters, caps, merch problems or something, okay? Thank you.
going to be used, there's not going to be any guesswork. The foundation, though, for using this as a demonstrative aid can be laid among multiple witnesses. Ms. McBanawan has already provided the initial layer with authenticating the transcript is accurate and correct. Any further foundation that needs to be laid for the introduction of demonstrative aid, the state will have to properly lay. But as far as using the demonstrative, it has to be accurate in all respects. Ms. Kappelman, do you understand?
I'm not sure why they're discussing this prior to the cross-examination of Sergeant Corbett. He wasn't involved. Is it the bump not the bump, the Dolce Vita recording that they are discussing? That's what I thought it was, but now I'm having doubts.
And what I'm saying.
I think what you're saying, Your Honor, is that you'd like the word inaudible to be present on the demonstrative if it's present in the transcript.
That is correct.
Okay.
Before it's shown to the jury, if the defense wishes to engage in any further voir dire with the witnesses that are going to lay the foundation on this topic, I'll allow them to do so. But as far as considering her past trial testimony for the basis of making this ruling, she has testified under oath in this trial that the transcript is accurate and correct. The court will accept that representation. She was subject to cross-examination. If the defense is going to call her again to dispute this point or for some other relevant purpose, you have the ability to do so. All right. Let's bring him in.
There he is. Mr. 5G. And there's Mr. 5 Foot in the tan suit. Is that tan? Is that what you call tan? Or just beige? I don't know.
You can be seated.
Neverly, what color is Rashbaum's suit?
Okay. Go ahead and bust him out.
McBanawa got paid. Her loyalty is to Wendy. What? What loyalty? Yeah, I don't know where you're going with that, man.
Anybody else?
Yes, Nicole, we have decided to go with Bonfire. Now, the joke of it is, before I started the Teespring merch store, the first one I signed up with and started working with was Bonfire. And I had to write to them to say, hey, could you please remove my shop because I've decided to go with Teespring. And I was kind about it. I just said, listen, you know, I've looked around other creators that do a similar product to me, and most of them seem to be using Teespring. So I thought that my end customers would be more familiar with that platform. So just for that reason, I thought I'd go with them. And they were very nice about it. They were like, okay, well, if you ever want to come back, you know where we are. And now I'm going to write to them again and say, hey, guess what? I'm back. And they'll be like, yeah, we've raised the price. Our fee, it's gone up. No, I'm sure they'll be very nice. But yeah, Bonfire, that's what STS uses as well. So I didn't know that at the time, but it is. And it looks good. It looks like a fine platform. And I do want to write to them and say about all the troubles that I've had with Teespring, and that, just to impress upon them, I hope you're not going to fuck me around as well, and all of my customers that have been waiting for 6 months for a fucking t-shirt. Bastards. Anyway, onwards and upwards. We just move on. We move on to a better company, and we say fuck them. And if I do find the time, I will look into legal action of some kind, because they should not be trading. It should be illegal for them to be trading. Their responsibility to their customers and their customers' customers. They've affected my reputation in the marketplace, and I believe that I would be able to have a valid case against them for loss of earnings. And their whole handling of it is absolute shit. If you're in fucking liquidation, you've got a responsibility to let your customers that depend on the service that you were committed to providing, let them know that it's all gone to shit. Unbelievable. I have, I don't know about never, but it has been very rare that I have encountered such a disregard of a service provider. It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing, and it seems pretty clear that it's a company wide issue. I mean, how many stores have been affected by this? I really want to find the time to do some research and find others that have been affected, because surely there must be a lot of people that are... Mine is a very small shop. We have not sold a lot. It's been great to see some products going out, and I think a lot of people have been happy with them and everything like that. But it's not like we're doing huge volume. But I imagine other creators or other people that use the service have serious volume being moved through that organization, dependent on their service. I mean, I'm really surprised that this has been going on for so long and they haven't been shut down by the whatever it is in the US. We would say trading standards, I think.
Good morning, members of the jury. We are going to continue with the examination of Sergeant Corbett. Last night when we left off, the state finished its direct examination. The defense is now...
She took life, could have walked. Well, I don't think she volunteered to take life as a loyalty for Wendy, as she thought she was going to get off. It wasn't like, well, I got paid, so I'll be loyal to Wendy, who I met twice and didn't know personally. There's no loyalty there, Julio. I don't know where you're going with that.
Going to have its opportunity to cross-examine him. When the defense is ready, you may examine.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I think I've just realised who the lady in pink is. It's that woman that was always a guest on Roberta Glass. What was her name? Oh, I forget. She got kind of a cool name. I think that might be who it is. Just basing... because you only heard her voice on Roberta Glass, but if, from what I remember about the voice, and I haven't seen that show in about a year and a half, but from what I remember about the voice, I could totally imagine it coming out of that pink lady there. And she said she was attending with her daughter. And if we look at the eye sockets of the lady in pink and the blonde next to her and their apparent ages, roughly, I think that could be mother and daughter, right? Let's have a look again. Look at the eye sockets of the blonde lady there. You see the blonde lady in the kind of behind Sarah with the necklace and the kind of mossy, browny green top. You see the eye sockets of the lady in pink and the blonde next to her. Cheekbones as well. Yep, I think that's mother and daughter, right? What do we think? In chat, everyone agree? Trying to remember the name. Can't remember the name. California AB. Sergeant Corbett is Tallahassee Police Department, not FBI.
Sergeant Corbett, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Now, you testified yesterday about phone records.
I did, yes, sir.
Okay. Phone records are only kept for a certain amount of time, right?
That's correct.
So you subpoenaed these records back in the 2014, 15, 16 timeframe, right?
Yes, most of the records would have been obtained primarily in the 2014, 2015. Those additional records obtained just prior to the intercept.
In the PowerPoint presentation that you showed yesterday, there was no new data in there since the arrests of Sigfredo Garcia, Luis Rivera, and Katie Magbanawa back in 2016, correct?
In the presentation, we have no new data.
Let me ask it differently. The presentation may have changed,
Correct.
but you didn't receive any new data since that point in time.
That's correct.
So everything in that presentation you had back in 2016.
Yes, we should have.
And you're aware that Mr. Adelson wasn't arrested until 2022, right?
Yes.
So it's fair to say that whatever is in your presentation, someone didn't think it was enough to arrest Mr. Adelson, correct?
Objection to speculation and relevance.
Relevance.
I'll move on. When you're doing your analysis, you are just plopping data in and looking for patterns, right?
That's one of the things I do, yes.
Okay. It's hard, believe me.
I know.
Okay. And let me say this. The amount of work was tremendous in putting this investigation together, correct?
It was, yes.
The amount of work in 2014 and 2015 in going through bus videos and ATM videos and SunPass records and phone records must have been thousands and thousands of man hours, right?
Yes,
And ultimately you got the two shooters, correct?
we did.
As well as Katie Magbanawa, right?
Yes.
And those records led you right to them, but it was a lot of work and amazing work, right?
It was a thorough and complete investigation, yes.
Amongst a lot of agencies, right?
Yes.
Now, when Charlie Adelson was arrested in 2022, the phone companies no longer had records for 2013.
What do you mean a lot of agencies? We've got the Tallahassee PD, the FBI. That's it. I mean, we haven't got AFT. There's no DEA. What other agencies are there? I mean, are they saying like phone companies and banks are also agencies? I mean, I guess so. Okay, fair enough.
13 or 2014, right?
It would depend on which company. Some would, yes.
But AT&T didn't, correct?
AT&T may have, yes.
Well, if I told you they didn't, would you believe me?
Yes.
Okay. And if you don't have the phone records, you also don't have cell site data, right?
That's correct.
And so if you don't have the phone records and you don't have the cell site data, you're limited to the phone records that you have, right?
Correct.
And your records began in May of 2014, right? Your phone records.
Yes.
So if we wanted to see the patterns of these calls at time periods before May of 2014, we are not able to do so, correct?
That's correct.
Now,
One moment. Whoever's phone is going off, turn it off or leave the courtroom. Please continue.
thank you, Your Honor.
I don't think Bernadette Peters is in Paper Moon. It's shit. What's her name? You know, that one. The one who's in Young Frankenstein as well. What's her name? Fuck. What is her name? I'm just blanking on her name. Madeline Kahn. Madeline Kahn. The late, great Madeline Kahn.
Now, I think you said on direct that when you look at the call detail records, there's sometimes duplication.
There is, yes.
So sometimes one call will look like 3 calls.
Yes.
And cell site
Let old Trixie sit up front with her big tits.
data, you talked about it a little bit on direct. Cell site data isn't for every single call, right?
No, we do not have cell site data for every call. If the call does not reach the handset, then we would see a record of that attempt, but there may not be cell site data associated with that particular event.
And with text messages, sometimes you can get cell site data and sometimes you can't, right?
It's largely dependent upon the carrier. Certain carriers do provide cell site location for text messages and others do not. For instance, Verizon.
What about AT&T?
I think Sergeant Corbett's getting a chubby with all of this cell tower talk. You give this guy an iPhone 16 Pro and he'll probably try and fuck it.
AT&T does provide location information with text messages.
But in your call detail records, aren't there instances where there are text messages and there's no cell site data associated with those text messages?
So again, there may be attempted messages that do not reach the handset where there may not be location. And then we kind of talk about text messages as a singular thing, but really we have messages that are completed through the carrier that go through the carrier's network. And then we have things such as iMessage, which from Apple devices, iOS devices, they don't go through the normal carrier network. And so we don't see records at all for those in the call detail records that the carrier provides. So there are a lot of messages that we see for which there is no associated location information or events in the carrier records.
Okay, and it's scary that I am doing this with you with my technological inefficiencies, but let's talk about iMessages a little bit. So iMessages are when an iPhone user is speaking to an iPhone user through text messages, correct?
Yes.
So if Charlie Adelson and his parents are messaging each other, it will often go through iMessages, right?
That's correct.
And associated with that, you wouldn't see cell site data, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, except when he's calling them on their landline number that they've had since 1979. They love to go on about that, don't they? They've had the same number since 1979. They move it from house to house. Of course he phoned it. Yeah, he phoned it once. What was it? It was like 0.63% of the time he called the landline. The rest of the time is all on cell phones. It was normal activity. What?
Now, SunPass records, you got them in 2014, right? In 2015.
I was not the one who received those directly, so I don't know exactly when they were obtained.
Okay. But you testified to some SunPass records yesterday, right?
I don't believe that we did.
Okay. Are you aware that in 2022 you can't get SunPass records back in 2014?
I was not.
Okay. Let's talk about frequency reports. And you mentioned this a bit yesterday, but I want to make sure it's clear. You said that one thing that you look at as an investigator is frequency reports, right? Meaning the amount of times that people are calling each other.
Yes.
And you said that you're looking at that to see if there are co-conspirators. I think that's one of the words you used, right?
And that is one of the things we're looking for, yes.
Okay. But frequency reports can also be seen between wife and husband, girlfriend and boyfriend, mother and son.
Can you imagine, like, say Sergeant Corbett and his wife are looking to spice up the marriage, you know? The wife suggests, you know, I could wear lingerie or, you know, or we could role play, and Sergeant Corbett just immediately perks up and says, I love that idea. Listen, honey, I want you to pretend to be a cell phone tower, and I'm the maintenance man to come and work on you. He loves that.
And daughter and father, right?
Correct.
So the fact that a mother and a son and a girlfriend and a boyfriend call each other a lot doesn't necessarily make them co-conspirators. Is that fair to say?
That's fair.
Okay. Depends on your perspective, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, these calls and call logs and frequency reports, they don't tell you what people are actually saying, right?
The records that I have from the carriers, no. We have no content with that.
Okay. You're just seeing the calls,
Yes.
and you're just seeing or looking for some patterns.
Yes.
But sometimes those patterns can bring about false positives or false assumptions, right?
Well, the patterns are what they are. The communications happened. They're there in the records. Their relevance or meaning is, you know, could be varied.
And their relevance or meaning sometimes determined by guesswork, right?
I wouldn't say guesswork.
Assumptions.
I think the call patterns are looked at in conjunction with other information, other evidence, other things that are going on at the time, and the totality of that would lend whatever relevance to those calling patterns.
Fair enough. So let's look at the totality of these calls, okay? So let's start with July 1. And from July 1, you can tell from text messages.
You know how sometimes if a man steps out of the marriage and, you know, the wife catches scent of perfume she doesn't recognize on his shirt, or maybe there's a little bit of lipstick on his collar or something like that, you know, with Sergeant Corbett and his wife, she'll be doing the laundry, you know, she'll be doing the laundry and smell his shirt and goes, fiber optic cable. You've been stepping out again on our marriage with fiber optic cable. Oh my God.
Messages that there was an incident between Sigfredo Garcia and Charlie Adelson, right?
Yes.
And so what I'm going to be talking to you about today is not only your report and your call records, but in trying to find out the patterns.
Veronica, welcome back, Veronica.
You looked at Mr. Adelson's and other people's text messages, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you can see from those text messages that this confrontation between Sigfredo Garcia and Mr. Adelson caused a lot of stress. You can see that, right, in the text messages?
Yes.
Okay. For instance, you can see in the text messages that for the only time the only time in your investigation there's text messages from Charlie Adelson's dad to Charlie Adelson after midnight.
I don't know that that's the only time, but it could be.
Well, you would agree that at 12:38 in the morning, his dad texts Charlie and says, "Are you home?" And Charlie says, "Yes, home safe," and the dad has a thumbs up. Do you agree with that? When you went through your investigation, you saw that, correct?
Well, I certainly don't remember every one of the tens of thousands of messages, but I can look it up real quick and confirm that.
May
But
I approach, Your Honor?
You might.
And it goes to the next page.
And are these times adjusted?
Yeah, they are adjusted.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's either 12:38 or 8 o'clock in the evening.
It's 12:38.
Okay. I can confirm that as well.
It's on the second.
Okay.
Looks like he's showing him the specials. Keep that menu away from Judge Everett, will you, Daniel Rashbaum? And Madame will have the filet.
Judge, while he's looking that up.
All Rashbaum wants to do is use this witness to cast doubt on the state, because he wants to say, you've had these records, these cell tower records, since 2016 or whatever it is, 2015, 2016, and the state didn't arrest him, right? Didn't think they had enough, right? You know, that's really all he's got. He can't argue any of the evidence, not against Sergeant Corbett.
Could we have a brief sidebar?
You may approach.
Sidebar skipping. How's it going, Charlie?
Messages at that time. So there is a message from Harvey Adelson to Charlie, or from Charlie to Harvey, saying, trying to return your call. That's at 8:10 in the evening on the 2nd. We're talking July 2nd.
We're talking July 2nd at 12:38 in the morning. And if you want to look on your thing at 8:38 in the evening, that's fine as well.
It's not there either. Because I have not adjusted this.
Are you sure that you have all the text messages?
This is one of the extractions. I'm not sure where that came from. I don't recognize that format that you have.
I'll move on, but are you sure that when you did this report, it included every text message received on Charlie Adelson's iCloud?
Oh, the opportunist, Daniel Rashbaum.
I believe that it does, yes.
But you don't have those, right?
I do not see those in what I'm looking at right here in the timeline.
I'll move on. You talked about this June 2nd, 2014 rental car pickup. Remember
Yes.
that? And during your testimony, you put Miss Magbanowa at the rental car pickup, correct?
Consistent with that, yes.
If Miss Magbanowa testified yesterday that she knew nothing about the first trip and had nothing to do with renting the rental car, that would be a lie, right?
Objection to speculation and relevance.
Overruled as to relevance, sustained as to speculation. You may rephrase if you're capable.
If she testified yesterday that she had nothing to do with being near the rental car or knowing about the first trip. That would not be consistent with your data, correct?
I don't know her testimony, but it would not be consistent with the location of the handset.
Now, Charlie Adelson's handset wasn't located anywhere near the rental car on that day, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, looking at his text messages, you could tell that he was working as late as 9:05 that evening, correct?
Again, I don't recall the content of every message, but there was nothing that I recall associating him with the rental of the vehicle.
May I approach Your Honor, try to refresh witness's recollection?
You may.
Does this refresh your recollection that he was leaving the office at 9:05 p.m. that evening?
It's about 500. This message here that you have starred?
These three messages here.
There's nothing about leaving the office. There's a request to put something in a safe. Thanks again. But I don't see anything that says I'm leaving.
What's the something in a safe?
I left a container of bone on your desk. It's in a blue box that says Zimmer on it. It's about 500 in bone.
Okay. Do you know what Charlie Adelson
What? I left a container of bone on your desk.
does for a living?
I do.
What does he do? What does he do for a living?
He is a periodontist.
And does he work with bones?
He does.
Okay. And do you know that he works with a dentist called Bloom?
I'm not familiar with that name.
And that dentist...
What? A dentist called Balloon? Balloon Bone? He left a box of bones for dentist Balloon. Did he not just say that? What the fuck?
In bone.
Okay. Do you know what Charlie Adelson does for a living?
I do.
What does he do? What does he do for a living?
He is a periodontist.
And does he work with bones?
He does.
Okay. And
Balloon
do you know
bones.
that he works with a dentist called Bloom?
I'm not familiar with that name.
And that dentist...
Okay, it's Bloom, right? Dentist Bloom. But the way Daniel Rashbaum says it, it sounds like dentist Balloon.
His office is in northern Fort Lauderdale?
Not familiar with that.
Okay. And so when you looked at that day to see where he was located, this text message meant nothing to you, right?
It just indicates that something was left in an office, and there's not a time with that. I just left something in your office, I'm leaving now. There's nothing in that exchange that gives me an idea of where he was at that particular time. And so no, I did not consider that in that. We look at the cell site locations primarily, but again, I have nothing that associated Mr. Adelson with the rental of that vehicle.
You can agree that when that message is sent, it's at 9:05 p.m., correct?
In your report, yes, sir?
Okay. You can agree that on your chart, remember you did that chart with all the red and blue arrows?
Yes, sir.
You can agree on your chart, his first phone call is to Catherine Magbanawa at 8:57 p.m.
Again, not having memorized every call, let me...
It's the first page of your chart.
The first call that evening, yes, was at 8:57 p.m.
If you take my word that he was leaving the office at around 9 o'clock, would that indicate that that call was made from the car?
If he was leaving the office, then it could have been made from the car, yes.
Okay. And there are no text messages before that call between him and Miss Magbanawa, correct? The last text message is at 6:41 that evening, correct?
Again, I can look at that. I will take your word. I do not recall any text messages that evening relevant to the rental of the vehicle.
The next page of this exhibit has a call back from Catherine Magbanua. Do you see that?
At 9:17 p.m.?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
The first call is only a minute long, right?
Correct.
And she calls him back. There's nothing odd for a girlfriend to call a boyfriend back on the phone, right?
Correct.
The next page has a text message at 9:31 from Wendy Adelson to Harvey Adelson. You see that?
Yes, sir.
Harvey Adelson's Wendy Adelson's dad, right?
Correct.
Do you have any idea what that text message said?
I don't know that we looked at that. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't recall what the text message was. Nothing of relevance to that rental of the vehicle.
But relevant enough to put it on this chart.
It's just a record of the communications. So the communication occurred, so it's included as in that series of communications.
Now, 2022, I have no access to Miss Adelson's text back then, right?
We have the forensic extraction of her handset, which could contain that text message.
What if I told you it doesn't?
Then it doesn't.
Okay. So we have no idea what that text says. It could say anything.
I'm not familiar with what the content of that text message is, no.
The next call you have is a call from Charlie Adelson at 9:44 to the Adelson residence. He calls his parents, right?
That's correct.
And again, using my time frame, he still could be in the car, right?
He could be.
By the way, when you went through the patterns, did you notice that he makes a lot of calls to his girlfriend and his parents in the morning and in the late evening?
He makes a lot of calls at all times, but yes.
Did you notice more calls in the morning when he's driving to work, in the evening when he's driving home from work, than in the middle of the day?
That would be correct, yes.
Okay. And are you aware that Charlie Adelson was working at the Adelson Institute the next day?
I was not.
Are you aware that he had a big surgery the next day at the Adelson Institute?
I was not.
Okay. We're going to get back to the residence calls, but let's just put a thumbtack on that for right now. By the way, when he calls the residence on this call, he's calling from his own cell phone, right?
That's correct.
He's not calling from a friend's phone.
Correct.
He's not calling from a payphone.
Correct.
He's not calling from a landline.
Correct.
The next call you have is a call between Catherine Magbanua and Sigfredo Garcia, correct?
Yes.
And same with the next one we'll skip over. It's between the killers, correct? Garcia and Magbanua?
Correct.
Now, Harvey Adelson calls Charlie Adelson at 10:16, right?
That's correct.
And this is cell phone to cell phone.
Correct.
That call happens at 10:16 and it lasts for a little about 5 minutes, right?
Correct. 5 minutes and 18 seconds.
And immediately thereafter, Charlie Adelson calls his dad back. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Are you aware that at the time that these calls happened, the Adelsons, you have them living...
Objection to counsel testifying.
I'll let you finish the question first, but go ahead.
Are,
You may finish your question.
are you aware... Where did you think the Adelsons were living, Donna and Harvey Adelson, at the time of these phone calls?
I don't believe they were living at the Icon at that point. I believe they were living further north.
Would it surprise you that they were living further south part-time at a place called the Continuum?
I'm not familiar with that.
Well, did you look at the cell phone, the text messages where they're talking about sharing a place at the Continuum?
I do not recall those.
Do you know whether the Continuum has bad cell phone reception?
I'm not familiar with that at all.
Would these two calls that you have as two different arrows indicate that the call could have gotten cut off and Charlie's calling his dad back?
Dude, it's not the fucking Rockies. How much bad cell phone reception is there in fucking downtown Miami? It's like in a high rise. Are you familiar with the Continuum having notoriously bad cell phone reception? So he had to call them on the landline, right?
The call could have ended for any number of reasons, and there's nothing in the records that would tell me it was cut off from a service reason versus just the conclusion of the call.
But the calls are immediately after one another, correct?
Not immediately. They are 6 minutes apart.
With no calls in between, right?
No calls between any of the involved parties. So there could be, if we were to expand and look at all of Charlie's calls, there could be calls to other persons, or Harvey Adelson could have calls to other persons. This summary is limited to just calls between our subjects, and there are no additional calls between our subjects in that time frame.
Fair enough. Skipping 2 away. You then have a call at 10.
What is a peel, Neville? Consider treating Metrix with a coffee, cocktail, or peel. I don't know, like an orange peel?
10:41 between Katie and Charlie.
That's correct.
And did you look to see whether there were any text messages in
Pearl Orlowska, 1987.
between this call?
I do not recall any text messages that evening in Mr. Adelson's return. There was a picture sent that were not retained, and that was the only communication that I saw in the iCloud return.
And the last 3 sheets have nothing to do with any calls or text messages involving any of the Adelsons, correct?
Correct.
Now, I want to talk to you about this sheet right here, which is this landline sheet. You recall this?
Yes.
And you talked about how it was very significant to you that there were so few contacts between Charlie Adelson or anyone, Charlie Adelson's phone and his parents' house phone, their landline. Remember testifying to that yesterday?
I do.
And remember testifying that this was an indication for you when people use landlines that they might be wanting to disguise things. Do you recall saying that?
That was a question that I was asked, if there was a perception that cell phones were less secure than landlines. I do believe that perception exists. And that was my answer to the question.
And this point was important enough to you that you made a whole slide on it.
I was asked to review the frequency of communications from the cell phones compared to the landline, and how frequently the landline was contacted versus their cell phones.
On all of the calls to the Adelson's landline, are they all from Charlie Adelson's cell phone?
The ones, yes, we were looking at Charlie Adelson's cell phone. That chart is based exclusively from his cell phone. So we're looking at the cell phone contacts between his cell phone, their cell phones, his cell phone, and their residence is what we're looking at. If he were to call from the office or call from other places, that would not be included.
Is that an indication that he wasn't trying to disguise anything?
I don't know if he's trying to disguise anything or not. Again, I was asked to look at the frequency of communications between the two numbers.
By the way, this landline, did you look at whether the phone number has ever changed since 1978?
I have not.
Yeah, what the fuck does that have to do with anything, Daniel Rashbaum? By the way, this phone line, this landline, did you review records about how long that phone number had been installed and registered to the Adelsons? 1978. when Dan Markel was 6 years old. That's when the plot began. He kicked a ball over the Adelson's fence one summer and they just lost their shit.
Let's move on to June 5th and the surveillance of Professor Markel's home and the return travel to Miami. You went through Charlie's text messages on the 5th during this time period, right?
I reviewed them at some point, yes.
And you reviewed them to see if there was anything out of the normal or routine, correct?
Fucking A, bro.
Looking for any information that was related
with me.
Oh, thank you, Fanta Scholar, for the coffee on buymeacoffee.com/True Crime Metrix. That is a fantastic way to support the channel. Or people can leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. What else? Like, share, leave a comment, and join us on Discord. Yeah, we wanted to start a raffle. Like, what was it? I forgot what we were going to do. But it was like, oh. But anyway, there are laws, and it wouldn't be a raffle, it would be a lottery. But we are looking into that, so how we can give away some free stuff in the future. So do help support that if you would like to, or if you're able to, or if you think it's a good idea. But yeah, we started looking into it. I was just about to do it. We had it all planned out, and then I just thought, is this legal or is this like gambling? And then I looked it up, and it is classified as a lottery, which you need licensing to do in. And then I was like, well, technically I'm not operating from the US, but because most viewers are in the US, it would be a US enterprise, so we have to abide by their laws. But we're looking into some kind of loophole, because I just think it would be really cool to give away some free stuff.
to this travel, the incident, anything like that.
When you reviewed them, did you see anything in this time period in the text messages that looked off?
Again, with hundreds of thousands of messages, I certainly did not attempt to memorize them all. I can look at that day and see. I don't recall anything that appeared off or appeared, that stood out to me.
You were asked about a birthday present. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Was there anything in the text messages discussing a caterer?
There was, yes.
Was there anything in the text messages discussing how Charlie Adelson was working on getting a caterer for the birthday party?
Yes.
Do you recall if those text messages were on June 5th, 2014?
I don't recall the exact date. Again, I can look that up, but...
Let me try to help you.
Okay.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Yes.
On June 5th, do you recall that Charlie Adelson was working late?
I do not.
Do you recall that his parents were talking about going to yoga?
I do not.
Harvey Adelson at yoga. Harvey Adelson in the downward facing dog. Triangle pose. And now, half moon pose.
Now, I want to move to June 6th and the location of the rental car. Now, the first thing you had behind this slide was a text message between Wendy Adelson and Professor Markell. Do you see that? And let me.
And I'm sorry, which?
Okay, let me show you so you can catch up. Right there.
Yes.
And this is a text message where Wendy Adelson, and it's in evidence, Your Honor, where Wendy Adelson asks Professor Markell whether he's in Tallahassee, July 14 to 18. I just want to know if I can have the kiddos on the 16th. Thanks. And she says, yes, you can. You see that?
Mr. Markell says yes, you
Sorry,
can. Yes.
Professor Markell says, yes, you can.
Yes.
See that? Are you aware that that was that there was a birthday party on the 5th in South Beach for Harvey's 70th birthday?
Yes.
And are you aware that the next slide you have Miss Adelson down in South Beach? Are you aware that she attended that birthday party on the 5th and stayed in town on the 6th?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in your experience,
I really don't think I've ever seen any trial attorney this boring. He's just so fucking dry. There's nothing to hang on to. Christopher DeCoste would be up here, like, just making everybody want more. Even when he's pissing people off, no one can say that he can't hold the room. You know? He might push too hard or in the wrong way, and I know sometimes he rubs people the wrong way, but he's just a good speaker. Rashbaum is so fucking boring, but I think, it's just important that we go through the whole thing just to see how hopeless and empty Charlie Adelson's attempt at a fucking not guilty verdict. Are you kidding? From 12 of your peers? Not going to happen. Because the reason that I think that is so important for us to really, really walk through. Again, I know a lot of us have already seen the entire trial more than once, but, we're watching it all together now. The reason it's so important is because Wendy would have known, as Rashbaum knew, as Josh Dubin knew, everybody knew that there's no fucking way. The chances of him getting a mistrial would be like winning the lottery. A not guilty verdict was never on the cards. And even in the event that he did manage to win that lottery and get a fucking mistrial just because one of the members of the jury wanted to fuck with the system, I mean, that's the only way. There's no sympathy here. With Katie's mistrial, you could say, okay, maybe one juror couldn't square themselves with sending both of the parents of 2 young children away to prison forever. Couldn't do it. Just couldn't cross that line. If Katie and Sigfredo had not shared the first trial as 2 parents, she probably wouldn't have had gotten herself a mistrial. Donna, obviously, upcoming trial, only played left, is the old, I'm too old to convict, what's the point card. She's going to come up frail, aching, coughing, maybe have a fucking stroke on the stand, whatever it is. It's going to be sympathy, sympathy, sympathy. And just with the hope that some juror has recently sent their elderly mother to a nursing home, retirement community, whatever, and feels guilty about it and can't do it twice. That's the only card left for Donna. What was the sympathy play for Charlie? There isn't one. rich, privileged, spoiled, arrogant. I mean, there is no sympathy card. So my key point is that Wendy and Rashbaum, Donna's delusional and entitled enough to make herself believe that if they put Josh Dubin in play, if they pay $1 million for a jury consultant, if they throw a shitload of money at Daniel Rashbaum, who's selling his services to go to Tallahassee to prep Charlie in person and all the rest of it that he's billing for, if we do all those things and throw a bunch of money at this, we'll have a shot and we'll get this done because Adelsons win and Adelsons don't give up. Anyone with a realistic view of this trial, Wendy Rashbaum, would have known from the beginning that the very, very best, and that would be lottery chances, is a mistrial, just because a juror wants to fuck with the system. So what happens then? He goes back to trial, right? You think the state's going to throw it out because he got a mistrial? No, it would be, 90 days? We're doing the trial again. You think you're going to get a mistrial twice? You're going to win the lottery twice? Or you're going to get a mistrial and then be retried and get 12 of your peers to say not guilty to this evidence? Are you crazy? Never going to happen. He was a lost cause. And Wendy, when she testified in this trial, knew that. Knew he was a lost cause. Whatever she said up there, there is no fucking way that she had any hope, notion, or concept that he would be getting off or out of prison ever. No chance. Why is that important? Because, hang on, why is that important? Well, it's important. We saw a lot of Wendy's testimony, particularly her cross-examination, the gentlest cross-examination in history by Daniel Rashbaum, and not just with Wendy, but often we see Daniel Rashbaum using this trial not to defend Charlie, but to defend the wider Adelsons, and in particular, Wendy. I'm not really making any other point than that, but that is what is going on here. And I think the reason we need to go through this and be bored out of our minds is to really cement that fact in our minds. Because, as we move ever closer towards Donna's trial, which I hope will be postponed again, I really don't want to go to Florida in August. I'm going to come all that way for the most humid month of the year. Let's do it in November. Please, November would be great. Some people are still expecting Wendy to defend Donna. Wendy will be defending Wendy. That's it.
Is it normal for co-parents to text each other about visitation of the kids?
Sure.
By the way, she's asking whether she can have the kids on the 16th, right?
She's asking for the date range of the 14th through the 18th. And yes, if I can have the kids on the 16th.
You're aware that Professor Markel's murder happened on the 18th, right?
I am, yes.
Didn't happen on the 16th, right?
That's correct.
And you're aware that Professor Markel had custody of the kids on the 18th, the day that he was murdered, right?
That's correct.
By the way, just moving back very quickly, and I don't know where your slide is on this, but regarding July 2nd, after the incident,
Yes, sir.
can you pull that slide up where you have a text message between Charlie Adelson and Katie, a series of text messages?
Yes, so that will be slide 28.
And one of the, can we put slide 28 on the screen? Is that possible? Oh, I'll do it from here. Hold on.
Actually, the witness can.
Can you put it on the screen?
I think Rashbaum does himself a disservice with this questioning, because what he's trying to do, I mean, he's really got nothing to say. There's nothing that he's said that I'm taking away from this, or the jury will be taking away from this. But, you know, with such a key witness as has developed so much of the evidence against Charlie, Daniel Rashbaum can't be seen to hide away from that, right? So he's got to come up here and pretend to ask questions and pretend that any of them have a point. I mean, it's ridiculous. But it probably has the opposite effect, because I'm sure the jury must be wondering, as we are, like, what's your point, man? What is your point? You're not telling us. You're just kind of acting like you're going somewhere, but you're not bringing any results. So what are we doing here?
Did you make a mistake here by accident, Sergeant Corbett?
It's possible these were cut and pasted from the actual Cellbrite report.
Isn't it true that Charlie Adelson said this really sucks?
I just don't like the fact that someone else thinks they can make the decisions in my life and to apologize for shit when it's too fucking late. I'm sorry, but he's a fucking pussy. All that leaving messages is fucking retarded and so childish, but whatever. How boring a conversation that is, huh? I mean, really?
It's possible.
Can you check?
I can.
Yeah, I mean, he's just, Acapella says, it seems like his MO, like he's just going through the motions so he can make those millions. Absolutely. I mean, he just needs to perform so that he can represent to Donna, you know, did everything I could, you know. Not that that matters. I'm sure he's already been paid in advance. But he wants more money after conviction. He's already thinking, okay, when he gets convicted, I'm going to say to Donna, listen, before it goes to the appellate lawyer, let me spend a few weeks on it just to put everything in order so it's a good handover. You know, by the way, here's a bill for that. You know, there will be further billing on top of his already paid fee. So his performance in trial is simply protecting that, you know. Veronica says, DeCoste is sharp, even if younger than Rash. I still think the Adelsons hired him. He focused on getting Katie off, which helped the Adelsons, even if it meant upsetting Wendy, his actual client. Well, I've wondered about a much deeper game with the DeCoste thing. maybe I've taken it too far, but there are several instances that align with this idea, and the idea is they are there overtly defending Katie McBanowa with quite spurious lines of defense, right? It's not very believable, but they are adamant in their client's innocence, obviously. But a huge part of their defense of Katie was blaming it on Charlie. Right? So the question becomes, if it's the Adelsons that hired DeCoste to defend Katie, and part of DeCoste's defense of Katie, a large part, involved heavily pointing the finger back at the Adelsons, what's going on with that? And my theory about that is, if Katie goes down, which her guilty verdict and conviction was almost as conclusive as Charlie Adelson's. It was almost as sure of a thing that Katie would get a conviction as it was that Charlie would get a conviction. So my thinking is, if the Adelsons hired DeCoste to defend Katie, or perhaps pretend to defend Katie, but act as her attorneys, and their defense was, it was Charlie, he went behind everyone's back, and da-da-da-da-da. When Katie does eventually go down, it makes it look like that her defense was faulty, right? That what Christopher DeCoste was saying wasn't true. And that would umbrella cover him pointing the finger at Charlie Adelson. You get what I'm saying? The fact that the finger pointing to Charlie is coming from DeCoste after Katie is convicted, it makes everything that DeCoste was saying null and void, right? It was an incorrect line of defense. And part of that incorrect line of defense was him blaming Charlie. So if DeCoste says Katie's innocent and this is why, Katie's conviction means that DeCoste's argument is full of shit. And if part of DeCoste's argument that is full of shit is him pointing the finger at Charlie, it makes him pointing the finger at Charlie full of shit. You see what I'm saying? Is that too deep? But there are several occurrences, I can't remember them off the top of my head, where certain elements of the defense of Katie, from Tara Kawas as well, were really questionable. It was like, what the hell did you say that thing for? Or that thing? It didn't really align with your general kind of opinion. And sometimes it pointed towards something like that being in play. Strange.
Let me see if I can help you. May I approach, Your Honor?
All right. You are correct.
Can we put that back? Can we put the other one back on the screen now?
Sure. Possibly.
And isn't it true that Ms. Magbanua said these two statements, not Charlie Adelson?
Veronica says, interesting theory. I think the global strategy of the Adelsons and Katie is taking it one trial at a time. Donna Adelson could now point the finger at Wendy Adelson because what matters is the current trial, my theory. Well, you know, I just don't see how that would be possible given the nature of the evidence against her. You know, it involves the two of us and so on. I mean, I just see Donna essentially going with Charlie's defense of double extortion, and all she knew was that this thing happened to Charlie and so on. I mean, I really, aside from the fact that I just don't see Donna pointing the finger at Wendy or anyone else, you know, in her family. Donna has to maintain the image of we were wronged. The Adelsons were wronged.
Well, let me double check that.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Wendy did play them like puppets completely. This thing about the house that we were talking about yesterday, I've been thinking a lot about that today. And I think it's huge. I think we really need to I've got to go through so much stuff to find the relevant portions, everything that's discussed about Wendy purchasing the house in Tallahassee, find out the specific dates, look at the other surrounding circumstances that we know were happening contemporaneously to that house potential purchase, right? Because, you know, I just see... What is the word? Like not a red herring, but a bluff or a dog whistle. It's a dog whistle. Is it a dog whistle? I think it's a dog whistle, right? Wendy pretends, you know, the Adelsons had been making all these efforts. The $1 million offer, the promise of plane tickets, trying to get Judge Hobbs to agree that the children should convert to Christianity, saying, oh, you know, she's a Southern black woman on the Bible Belt and so on. Maybe she'll love that idea and stick it to Markel. Well, none of that was going to work, and Wendy knew that. And I think Wendy needed to escalate things and get Donna to raise the stakes and go to a more drastic level, such as murder, right? And I think she did that by pretending to want to purchase this house in Tallahassee. And I think her presentation to Donna was like, oh, I'm giving up. Look, nothing's worked. We've tried everything. It's hopeless. I'm going to set up roots. I would have loved to have come down to Miami, but there's nothing else we can do. We've tried everything. It's hopeless. It's never going to work. I'm going to give up and stop fighting, and I'm just going to make the best of it, and I'll buy this really nice house in Tallahassee, and we'll just set up roots here. And yeah, you'll be able to see the children on the holidays, and we'll still come down from time to time, but I'm going to continue working at FSU in a non-tenured professor position and set up this house in Tallahassee. And Donna's like, fuck that. No way. We're not giving up. Raise the stakes, go to plan murder. You know, that seems very, very Wendy. Because there's just no way that Wendy genuinely wanted to purchase that house and commit to living in Tallahassee with the children. And give up on the relocation to Miami. No way. No way. And it was Charlie that convinced Wendy to pull the plug on the house, right? In one phone call. Remember? He said, I'll give you 5 reasons it's not a good reason to, a good idea to purchase that house. Oh, if you purchase that house, it'll be the second biggest mistake of your life. The first one being marrying Professor Markel. So, what else was said on that call? You talk someone out of a house purchase that they're supposedly committed to and have moved along the process. It wasn't some prospective idea. She was on the cusp of putting money down. You're going to talk someone out of a decision like that in one phone call? How? By saying everything's taken care of? The killers are in motion? It's happening next week or whatever, you know? Some kind of reassurance that the problem, Markel, will be taken care of soon, and you're not going to need that house in Tallahassee because you're going to be able to relocate because we're taking care of business. Oh, I've got to find some time over the next couple of days to go and collect every piece of content that supports this. Or maybe not supports this, but shows everything to do with that house purchase. Because when we look at it all together, I think we're going to see that that's what it is. I'm just going on my memory right here, but I've convinced myself pretty much. More than 90%, 98% sure, I'd say.
Right after. Yes. All right. Mine's just 9. That's correct.
Okay. Going back to June 6th, you showed Charlie Adelson staying at Miss Magbanawa's residence that evening, correct? Well, you show him there at 12:30 in the morning and 11:46 in the morning, right?
On the 6th.
On the 6th.
Yes, with the events that we looked at, he had an event at 12:30 a.m. and then the next event at 11:46 a.m.
And that was...
Yeah, Veronica, but I just don't see Donna pointing a finger at Wendy. I don't think that would actually help her defense. You're going to say, it was Wendy, but all of this stuff that I said, I mean, the evidence on the wiretaps and in the run-up to the murder, planning Dad's birthday gift, asking Charlie to delete text messages, saying she's got to talk in the gas station on the way to Gainesville. Then the bump happens. The way she responds to that, you're gonna say, yeah, it was Wendy, but all of this other suspicious stuff I did. I mean, her only hope to explain that away is something similar to Charlie's excuse, which was, that Donna was writing the checks to. I think if Donna pointed the finger at Wendy, it would be an even worse defense than what it is currently, which is that Donna found out that Charlie's girlfriend had ran her mouth and now was being extorted by Latin kings, and was aware of that enough to say on the bump, it involves the two of us. As in, I'm now being extorted. It's happening again. It just wouldn't jive with Wendy played us, and then I did all this suspicious stuff. Aside from the fact that I think it's very important for Donna to say, we are all innocent. And I know what you mean about the only trial that matters is the current trial, because the jury for each trial, it's much bigger than that for Donna. She's a reputation addict.
That would be consistent with him leaving his parents' party, his dad's party.
Donna will insist that every Adelson is innocent. And after she's convicted, she will continue to insist that every Adelson is innocent and that they were wrongfully convicted, that they were set up by the Latin kings, and so on and so on. And she'll die. She'll die by that. She will never say, yeah, it was us.
Party and staying in South Beach at his girlfriend's house?
It could be, yes.
And looking at the text messages, could you tell that the family was going to get back together in South Beach the next day for dinner?
There was conversation to that, yes.
Now, if we could move to July 14th. Your analysis through the text messages and through the cell site data shows that Charlie Adelson had dinner, or met up, I don't think it says dinner, oh, it actually does, had dinner with Katie Magbanua on the evening of the 14th, correct?
That's correct.
That would be inconsistent with, if there's testimony in this courtroom by Miss Magbanua saying that she did not have dinner with him that evening, that would be inconsistent with your data, correct?
What I have is a text message indicating that they could eat closer to her residence, and there is location information that Mr. Adelson traveled to that area, traveled away from that area. I don't know exactly where Midtown is, where the request to eat was, and then traveled back to her residence. What they did, I do not know.
Okay. Now, what you do have, and this is important, so I want you to go to this page of your exhibit. You have him leaving, Charlie Adelson leaving the area around 12:42 a.m., correct?
He has events consistent with the area of her residence at 12:42, and then the next event at 1:02 has traveled some distance. So yeah, somewhere after 12:42 he would depart that area.
Okay. And you have a phone call from Sigfredo Garcia, a call from Katie to Sigfredo Garcia at 12:48.
That's correct.
So that would be consistent that phone call was made after Charlie Adelson left the residence, correct?
Correct.
if you're looking at patterns, it might indicate to you that Katie wanted to make a call to Sigfredo without Charlie being there, right?
It could be.
By the way, you have no phone calls whatsoever between Charlie and Sigfredo Garcia or vice versa.
That's correct.
And you have no indication anywhere in this chart, through cell phone data or otherwise, that Katie ever called Sigfredo when Charlie was with her.
I certainly have not analyzed months of location data to see if they could possibly be together when a phone call was made to Mr. Garcia.
Well, let me ask you this question. There's a lot of pages in your exhibit with a lot of dots.
Yes.
On any of those dots, can you tell? None of those dots show that Charlie Adelson was with Katie Magbanowa when she ever called Sigfredo Garcia, correct?
That's correct.
July 15, 2014, the Prius rental. What color was the Prius?
Green.
It wasn't silver, right?
The Prius was not silver. It's a mint metallic green.
And is Prius a Toyota or a Nissan?
It is a Toyota.
Now, you did the arrow sheet again for calls on the 15th, right?
Yes.
This time you did it a little bit differently, right?
Yes.
What was different this time versus the way you did it previously?
It was just contacts between persons as opposed to breaking down each individual call.
And these contacts between persons, some of them might have been callbacks or misconnections or voicemails, correct?
That's correct.
Judge?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to say something in private to the bailiff.
We'll take a brief recess. Members of the jury, please follow the bailiff.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
What the hell was that? Was that a member of the jury? I'd like to say something in private to the bailiff. What was it? We really want to know. Don't forget, guys, you can support the channel on buymeacoffee.com/True Crime Metrix for all your coffee needs. True crime coffees all round. And memberships. Memberships, fantastic. Memberships with that fantastic icon. Loyalty badges. How great are those? And other perks. Fantastic perks, great perks. Coffee perks. How long is this recess? I'd like to read a love sonnet to the bailiff in private.
That's preventing them from being able to follow the testimony itself. Obviously, you all are committed to sit here, watch the trial as it unfolds, but nothing is to distract the jurors from their job, which is a task at hand. If you need to speak with each other, as we become louder, then a whisper you need to exit the courtroom. Anyone who's unclear about what I'm saying right now. Please enjoy watching the proceedings, but again, do not distract from what's taking place.
I guess we'll see, Veronica. I don't see it myself. I don't see Donna taking any advice from anyone, really. I see Donna insisting on the defense that she wants. To be honest, her lawyers are probably under no illusion, as Dan Rashbaum was under no illusion, that it is an insurmountable mountain to climb, and that the only shot, and I disagree with you that the only shot is throwing Wendy under the bus. I don't think that's how Donna sees it. I think Donna and her lawyers see the only shot, and the best shot is sympathy. Just that's the only shot. I just don't understand, and maybe you can explain it to me. But how would Donna throwing Wendy under the bus get her out of trouble? Let's briefly consider the main points of evidence against Donna. There's the obvious checks written by her to Katie McBanower. There's the vicious, hateful emails to Wendy about Dan and about her insane, desperate need for relocation of Wendy. There's a bunch of pre-bump wiretaps. There's text messages, pre-murder even, records from Charlie's iCloud that show Donna seeming very much so to be planning and talking in secret with her son, who is a co-conspirator that has already faced conviction and is serving a life sentence. I just don't see how Donna saying, Wendy played me and it was all her, undoes any of that evidence against her. Now, the real ace in her hand is the sympathy. Because with the sympathy, that's not something that's necessarily weighed up against the evidence. To a degree, there could be a photograph of Donna covered in blood, burying Markel. And if sympathy is the thing that gets a juror to say, to at least hang the jury, it's not in response to how strong the evidence was. It's a blind result based on an emotional response. I just don't see this thing you're saying about blaming Wendy would be a good play for Donna. How would it undo any of the multiple damning factors against her? It just just wouldn't, especially when there's so little to refer to of Wendy's involvement in terms of digital record, communication chains, and so on. There's not much. Not to say that she can't be convicted. I believe she can, and should have been already. I'm talking about Wendy now. And on top of those factors, which are the fundamentals of kind of the technical aspects of arguing her innocence. On top of that, I think for Donna to admit the involvement of any one of her family members would almost pretty much be as bad as admitting her own involvement. She, about more than any of them, has this nucleus concept, as the matriarch, as the central figure. I think it's very important to Donna to insist that Charlie, Wendy, Harvey, herself are all innocent. I'm just going to get through these comments here. Yeah, buy me a coffee. Very nice. Join TCM. Very nice. There's nothing playing right now, Mary. Imagine Judge Everett as a kid. A good boy. Yeah, the offer to Dan. I mean, there's a sack of evidence that Donna can't get away from, and pointing the finger at Wendy doesn't account for any of that. She would need to admit her own part in this conspiracy guilt if given a plea, unless it's 5 years imprisonment. It's all and the same to her due to her advanced age. I do think Donna is guilty, but her only shot at a lighter sentence is blaming Wendy. Say he played her, she played her, manipulated everything, even the real evidence. Sympathy's gone the second that jury hears. That ship has sailed. There's no plea deal anymore. And even if there was, I mean, she's 75 years old. You know what I mean? There's no shorter sentence that isn't a life sentence. Even with a plea deal, I think the best she could hope for is, okay, we'll give you 30 years instead of a life sentence. At 75, at 45, that would be a life sentence. If Wendy got 30 years, it would be a life sentence for her, probably. So when you're 75, a plea deal for a shorter, quote-unquote, shorter sentence on a murder charge in Florida, which ain't going to be much shorter, kind of, loses its meaning, doesn't it? Those emails, but she could try the I was used angle. Not freedom, just less time. Well, again, less time. She's 75. I believe every lawyer, separately and together, is protecting their client and the other one's interest. I don't think John LaRoe has shown any consideration to any Adelson other than Wendy. At all. Wendy is a sole player in this. Under their direction, they are a team. Donna pounded that into their heads. I don't think Wendy feels like that. I don't think Wendy feels a team. She's jettisoned herself from a sinking ship. Metrix, do you think a plea deal of no time to squeal on Wendy would ever be offered? That's what I was hoping for a year ago. I thought if Georgia Kappelman could show Wendy...
Fucking A, bro. I'm gonna fucking fuck up where the fuck you fucking with me.
Thank you, Neville. I thought if Georgia... For the coffee on buymeacoffee.com. Many thank yous, Neville, darling. I thought if Georgia Kappelman could show and demonstrate to Donna Adelson that her daughter, Wendy, fucking despises her, blames her for getting married to Dan in the first place, and subsequently stuck in Tallahassee. Everyone thinks she blamed Dan for getting her stuck in Tallahassee. Who got her with Dan? Who sat with her on J-Date and said, look at this guy, marry this guy, because that's the kind of guy that I want to say that you're married to because he's been to Harvard. Marry him. We'll bring him under our control. Don't worry about it. There'll be no kosher food. We won't have to worry about that. We're having paella every weekend and shrimp, and the kids are going to eat piles and piles of bacon. Don't worry about it. We'll bring him round to our way of thinking. Well, that wasn't possible because Professor Markel, had too much resolve to be influenced by these sycophants. Wendy massively blamed Donna and felt that she was owed this solution. And even if her mother and brother faced life in prison to give her that solution, she was owed this solution. On top of that, I keep making this point, and I don't know if I'm getting repetitive or if people are hearing it for the first time, but on top of Wendy being owed a solution, there also seems a strong likelihood to me that Wendy wanted to inflict damage on her mother and brother for the nature of their joint interfering in her life. We've heard Donna and Charlie on the phone, and this I can understand. Wendy has been seen as the weakling of the pack, the one that needs to be dictated, essentially. Put in places, told what to do this, do that, Marry this person, live in this house, behave like this. That's oppressive. And the thing about people that are oppressed is there's a point where they snap and bite back. And I believe that Wendy has bitten back hard. So not only did she get what she was owed, the drastic solution to take care of Markel so that she could relocate and be, get this, this fast life, this best life shit going on. Not only that, and all the money from Markel and the support for the kids, $4,800 a month and so on, everything from the trust and life insurance, whatever. But also to punish her mother and brother by having them go down for murder and face life in prison. It's the definition of two birds with one stone. You feel owed to get your solution, and you want to punish your mother and brother. So, have them, your mother and brother, provide you with the solution by doing an act that will get them life in prison. You get your solution, you get your revenge, and you take all their money. I'm totally convinced of that. There is no inkling of Wendy thinking, oh my God, I can't believe that we chose this path. Now my beloved mother and my darling brother have been taken away and we got to Miami, but this was such a bad idea. We should have never have done this. There is zero of anything that even has the slightest whiff of that. On the contrary, she seems over the moon about it. And as far as her feeling like the walls are closing in and she's starting to panic, like I've heard some other people report, I'm afraid those people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. She is not panicked. There's another additional element to this, which is Wendy is like a fucking skydiver, or that guy that jumps off the mountain in the squirrel man, He flies down the mountain and then parachutes, just missing the rock. The taste of being on the edge of death. She's a fucking thrill seeker. Coming into the courtroom to testify to Georgia Kappelman and having this almost telepathic conversation with Georgia Kappelman. I know that you know that it was me, and I know that you know I know it was me. It's like she gets off on that. And I imagine that it for her kind of, for that kind of sick individual, it would be a high that you want to repeat. Like a base jumper. Once you've jumped off a building and parachuted, you've got to do it again because you've never been so in the moment, It's very similar to what Wendy does in court. So as far as being arrested, I think that she is prepared for that eventuality. I think she's always been prepared for that eventuality. Look at what she did in the interrogation. Are you going to tell me that she wasn't enjoying herself in that interrogation? And not just because of realizing that Markel was dead and she was on her way to Miami, but in the duplicity, in being in the fucking lion's den and having people wait on her. Can I get you a blanket? Can I get you a water? Would you like a soft drink? Would you like something to eat? We're going to give you a ride back. We'll get someone to drive your car if you don't feel well enough. Jane comes in. Is Jeff this much of a lunatic? She's pulling all the fucking levers. She's got it going, man. She's accomplishing her targets, her aims. She's getting a fucking buzz out of that like you wouldn't believe. Now, you know, you could say to me, hey, Metrix, yeah, but surely Wendy doesn't want to sit in jail for 1.5 years, 2 years awaiting trial. I'm sure she wouldn't be happy then. I think she'd have good grounds. You know, I know someone's going to come in to fucking chat here and say, oh, there's no bail for a murder charge in Florida. Yeah, there's no bail for a murder charge in Florida, but there is an Arthur hearing. And an Arthur hearing exists so that a defendant might apply for bail on a non-bondable offence, such as murder. And the things that have prevented Charlie and Donna from having their Arthur hearings granted and receiving bond. They both applied for bond on a non-bondable offence. The things that prevented them from having that granted were risk to the community, risk to tamper with witnesses, risk of flight. Charlie said if they'd have had any evidence, we'd have already been at the airport. Donna was at the airport. So this is another reason why I say, you know, I hear this all the time as well. Wendy's getting ready to flee. She might try and cross the border into Mexico or charter a private plane. There is no way we are going to see Wendy Adelson attempt to flee. Specifically for the reason that in the event of her arrest, she wants that fucking Arthur hearing to be granted. Right? Risk to the community. Not enough evidence of that. Risk of tampering with witnesses. All the other witnesses have been arrested. Risk of flight. No, there's other things as well. There's other things that worked against Charlie and worked against Donna that aren't there working against Wendy. My point is, the things that the state argued, they said, Judge, we do not want you to grant this Arthur hearing and grant bond on this non-bondable offence because of risk to the community, risk of evidence tampering, risk of flight, and so on. All of the arguments that the state made to prevent that hearing being granted, that Arthur motion, none of them apply to Wendy. So I think there will be a good chance in the event of Wendy's arrest, she will have an Arthur hearing. She will have the best lawyer that we've seen ever in this case. The best defense lawyer. It obviously takes some beating of Georgia Kappelman. But, you know, it will be a good show. So, it looks like, in the event of Wendy's arrest, that she will be out on bond. And then she'll be coming to court. And she'll probably be the only Adelson so far smart enough not to testify in her own defense. Let the lawyer do the talking. Don't make yourself vulnerable to Georgia Kappelman. That completely changes the game. Charlie had to testify. Donna has to testify. Wendy doesn't have to testify. And obviously I know that that's always up to the individual, but certainly with Donna and Charlie, the case against them was such that not testifying would be madness. They had to give it a shot, or Donna will have to give it a shot. And Donna will be testifying not to explain the evidence away, but to do her I'm old and frail performance to the jury, because that's what she's cashing in on. Not pointing the finger at Wendy. I don't see that coming at all. But, you know, who knows? Is that the rant over? Did I rant? I'm sorry. Let's go back to the video. Thank you, Veronica, for the super chat. Brilliant. Owned a solution. What is this here? Veronica says, 1, owned a solution. 2, getting back at Donna and Charlie. Owed. Oh, okay. Yeah, I get it. 3, thrill seeker. Brilliant. Yeah, and it's all done in one move, right? One move takes care of all 3. And that really is how I see it. And I don't have doubt. I don't think about any of those things as maybe. And I know some people that I'm talking to won't agree. Which is why I really want to find the time to, bring lots of points out of all the different videos, all the different interviews, testimonies, wiretaps that really show this opinion, because it's all in my fucking head. There's not much else in my head other than this case. Neverly Darling says, Veronica, I've been saying that organizing this hit was a thrill for Charlie, the maestro, the James Bond, believing he could pull it off. And the other thing is, people love to call Wendy an idiot, and I see why. But actually, I've been in awe of her, the depth of her planning and thinking. It is quite something. I think for someone like Wendy, who has had her moral compass completely removed, it's not a factor. Conscience is for suckers, is the Wendy Adelson motto. Is that a clinical psychopath? Sociopath? Probably. Am I qualified to give that diagnosis? No. But if you're already intelligent, and we would never know that from reading her fucking book, and you don't have a conscience, that really opens up how much you're able to do. If that little voice inside you that says this is wrong isn't there at all, it's like a superpower. Wendy has that power. It's pretty scary. Annette Brabin. Hello, Annette. The way Wendy tried to stitch up the cast, chatting about him with Jane to lay the ground, implicates her. Yes, I mean, just one of the many things. If anyone's on the fence about Wendy, I don't know what to tell you anymore. I mean, I'm not talking to you, Annette, but I really can't, spend thought, energy, or time in talking to people that have that have doubt. You know what I mean? But, I think Wendy might have been involved. Yeah, I'll say. Mary says, acapella, that's funny. What did acapella say? Will Wendy really be able to resist going on the stand? Donna will be collapsing on the stand. Yeah, well, perhaps not. I mean, perhaps she won't be able to resist. I think it would be the appropriate move for her. Whereas it's quite clear to say that Charlie had to go up. It's quite clear to see that Donna has to go up. But I think with Wendy, the best thing would be to let the lawyer do the talking. Because she's not going to have Daniel Rashbaum. She's going to have a lawyer that is incredible. I don't know if it's going to be John LaRoe himself, but whoever it is, man, they're going to be shit hot. Wendy is fake and a liar. She is used to people always defending her. She plays people like a fiddle. Donna will never give her up. Acapella says, I think that Wendy is very clever, crafty, cunning, devious even. Yeah, absolutely. And maybe she'll hold her breath long enough to pass out. And hit her head on the corner of the defense table. That'd be nice. She blew it up by not contacting the daycare to see if her kids were okay. Well, when should she have done that, Veggie Girl? When she drove down Trescott? I mean, if she had had the slightest concern after driving down Trescott and seeing a police blockade, the move would not have been to call the daycare, but to ask the police officer who was at the roadblock, what is going on? Is that Professor Markel's house? What's happened? Where are my children? You know, you're not going to drive off and call the daycare, are you? You're going to ask there and then, are my kids? Where are my kids? Beverly says, or saying, I thought you'd think I'm a suspect back in the car on our way over. A suspect for what? I never told her Danny was shot. Yeah, exactly. Looks like Judge Everett is sharing out a box of chocolates. Okay, save the caramel swirl. He likes to save those till the end. Those are his favorite. Caramel swirl for Judge Everett only, please.
The tell effect of jurors. Thank you.
What went on? That juror said, can I say something to the bailiff in private? And then they fucked off for about an hour. Fucking Corbett had to stretch his legs. My God, what the fuck?
Yes. The first time we looked at the calls, shorter time frame, and we looked at each individual event. For this, they were summarized. All the calls are there. They were summarized in the pictures with arrows as just the totality of contacts between certain people. So the total number of contacts and the duration of those contacts.
And those could include voicemails and missed calls, correct?
That's correct.
Now, are you aware that on the 15th, there's some communications between Charlie Adelson and the Adelson residents, correct?
Yes.
Are you aware that from the text messages that there were some billing issues that Charlie was having with his mom that day? Do you recall that?
No.
Okay. Are you aware that his mom was trying to figure out about a bill with a company and what she should do with it?
Objection to hearsay.
Sustained. You may ask the question in a different way.
I'll move on from it. One moment here. Are you aware that on that day, Mr. Adelson purchased a vehicle?
I'm not.
Are you aware anything in the text messages about partnering in a limo?
I know that there's conversation at various times about limo, but I don't recall specifically from that day.
You don't recall that that was the day when he and others closed on a limo?
No.
They closed the window of a limo?
Now, you have a slide about a July 15th meeting between Garcia and Magbanawa.
Yes.
During this meeting, you can tell from cell site data that Mr. Adelson's about an hour north, correct?
I believe so.
Now let's talk about your slides on July 17th. The slides on July 17th, you again have no idea what Mr. Adelson is discussing with Donna Adelson, correct?
I don't recall the specifics of any communication that day.
And on the 17th, there's two communications with Miss Adelson, between Charlie and Donna, correct?
That sounds correct.
And then there's a bunch of communications between Katie, Sigfredo, and Luis Rivera, correct? Several
Yes.
slides.
And I believe there's more than two between, oh, that's Wendy. Yes, I believe I see at least three on the 17th, four, if you count the one on early morning, the 18th, between Charlie Adelson and Donna Adelson. And then, yes, there are a number of communications between Ms. Magbanawa and Mr. Garcia.
So we're going to get to the one early in the morning on the 18th. There's a communication early in the morning on the 18th between Charlie Adelson and Catherine Magbanawa. You see that, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you know whether that communication had to do with a fight they had earlier in the day?
I don't.
And the communication with Donna Adelson that morning at 1:02 is a 0-second call, right?
Correct.
Would that be consistent with what I call a butt dial?
It could be a butt dial. It could be an unintentional dial. It's obviously a very, very short duration, was terminated very quickly.
By the way, there's a couple calls that evening between Charlie and Catherine Magbanawa. You see that, right?
Yes, sir.
I know you said that you look primarily at days where events occurred, right?
Yes, sir.
But it makes sense that you would also look at days when events don't occur, right?
We did, yes.
So, was it common on days when events didn't occur that Charlie Adelson would almost always speak to his girlfriend late at night?
They spoke frequently, yes.
And almost every night they spoke, correct?
I would
Before
agree with that,
bedtime,
yes.
right?
Yes.
And that would be on a regular day versus an event day, correct?
Correct.
Let's move on to July 18th. And the first document you have is a calendar entry from Wendy Adelson, and that entry is deleted, correct?
Correct.
Do you know of people who delete their calendar entries after they occur?
I'm sorry?
Let me rephrase. Do you keep a calendar?
I do.
Do you know of people who, when the event occurs, they delete it from their calendar?
Yes.
It's pretty common, right?
I don't know how common it is, but it certainly happens.
And you have a call at 8:09 in the morning from Wendy to Donna, and then a call at 8:09 in the morning from Donna to Wendy.
Yes.
Right. And then you have, well, let me ask you, were you aware that there was a Best Buy repairman coming to fix a TV that day?
Yes.
And were you aware that the warranty for that TV was in Donna and Harvey Adelson's name?
I was not.
You then have an 8:11 text where Donna is telling Wendy that Best Buy called her, meaning Donna.
Yes.
Would that be consistent with the warranty being in Donna and Harvey's name?
It could be.
You then have a text from Wendy Adelson which says, "This is so sweet." Do you remember that?
Yes.
Could you tell that it was a picture?
I don't know that it was a picture.
Okay. Do you know what it was?
Just a text that said, "This is so sweet."
And that ominous text, scary text, that was also deleted, right?
It was, yes.
Now, you then have a call between Charlie Adelson and Wendy Adelson at 9:12 that lasts for only 29 seconds. Is that consistent with not reaching the recipient of the call?
Yes.
And then you have another slide with a call at 9:19 where Wendy Adelson calls Charlie Adelson back and they speak for 18 minutes, right?
Correct.
Now, through your investigation, are you aware that Charlie Adelson was working in Jupiter that day?
I do not recall that.
Okay. Do you happen to know how far Jupiter is from Charlie Adelson's house?
It's a distance.
Okay. Would it surprise you that can be a 2-hour drive?
No.
And do you know that when he started work that day in Jupiter?
I do not.
Okay. Do you know about what was
One
taught?
moment. Bailiff, please escort out the person whose phone is ringing.
Whoa. Who is it? I bet it's mentor lawyer. It's Ruth.
Yeah.
It's Ruth Markel. Let her stay. Ruth's getting kicked out of the fucking gallery. Wow. Veronica says, so I thought I knew this case inside out, but who said? You're either stupid or you're lying. Sounds like Charlie. A good idea for merch. Could also be it's different today, isn't it? Yeah, I like that too. We did a You're Either Stupid or You're Lying shirt. It was pretty popular. Our good friend Sally bought the kitchen apron with You're Either Stupid or You're Lying. It was Charlie to June on that abusive call. You're being weird, June. June, you're making me want to be with other girls. No, you're stupid, June. You're either stupid or you're lying. You told me to go and cheat. What a catch.
If there are any more issues with phones, murmuring audibly, or anything else, you are leaving the trial. I hope I am making myself clear. Mr. Rashbaum, you may continue.
Oh, I love it when Judge Everett says it how it is. If there are any other problems with phones or calendars or iPads, you are leaving the trial. I hope I make myself clear.
Clear. Issues with phones.
What? Come on. Just want to hear that again.
The gallery's conduct during the trial. If there are any more issues with phones, murmuring audibly, or anything else, you are leaving the trial. I hope I am making myself clear. Mr. Rashbaum, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. That morning through text messages, could you tell that there was an issue between Wendy Adelson and Professor Markell regarding some swimming and the boys?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know if Charlie Adelson and Wendy Adelson were talking about that on
I
the
do
phone?
not.
Do you know if Charlie Adelson and Wendy Adelson were talking about the fight that he had with Katie Magdanowa the day before?
I do not.
And with all of these calls on the 18th, you have no idea what they're discussing on the phones, correct?
Correct. We don't have any recordings of those, so we don't know what was said during those communications.
By the way, there's several back-to-back calls in here between Charlie Adelson and Catherine Magdanowa. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And the calls are pretty short in duration, and then there's a longer one.
Yes.
Are you aware that there's cell site issues on the turnpike going to Jupiter?
I'm not.
And just so everyone's clear, when you did these graphs, in parentheses is the length of time of the call, correct?
That's correct.
So if there's a call for instance, 11 seconds, it's probably not a connection, right? Voice to voice.
It could possibly be, but more likely not. Yes.
Now, you have a call between Catherine Magdanowa and Charlie Adelson at 10:07 a.m.
Yes.
Looking at the text messages around that period of time, in the text messages, are there discussions about dinner that night?
I don't recall.
Do you recall discussions about Charlie getting dinner with a friend?
There was a conversation about that, yes.
And do you recall discussions back and forth about whether he would get dinner with the friend or whether he would get dinner with Catherine Magdanowa?
I believe so, yes.
And it was a bit of an exchange back and forth, correct?
I remember several messages about dinner and timing, if I recall.
Now I want to move on to Wendy Adelson's travel on the 18th and cell site locations, okay? And what I'd like to do, well, let's try it just verbally, but I want to do it carefully, okay? if you look at your timeline, the first document you have, and maybe you can pull it up actually, is that ABC Fine Wine and Spirits receipt.
Yes.
Okay, and I want to be particularly looking at times, okay?
Yes.
Times are important in this case, all right? So on that receipt, we see that Wendy Adelson bought the liquor and paid for it at 12:49 p.m. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Now, if you can go to, I think it's the next page, but let's see. Perfect. You'll see that Wendy Adelson is nowhere near Trescott at 12:30, right?
Well, depending on what you mean by nowhere near.
Let me ask you this. She's here at 12:30, right?
Her handset's communicating with a cell site there, so
And Trescott's all the way down here, and there her handset is communicating with another cell site, correct?
that's correct.
And you would agree, you can't see Professor Markel's house from here, correct?
I would not exclude his residence from possibly being serviced by that cell site. We actually see that Mr. Rivera's handset, also AT&T, communicates with that cell site when he was there.
So your testimony is that Wendy Adelson isn't here?
No, I would certainly not say she's at that definitive point. That's the location of the cell site that her handset is communicating with. And as we know, the cell sites have a relative coverage area, so that's not saying that she is specifically at that point.
Do you know how far the house is from ABC Liquor?
The house is very close to ABC Liquor.
Like 2 minutes away, right?
Yes.
So is it fair to say that, let's say it took her 10 minutes to buy the alcohol that she knew what she was getting, and it's 2 minutes away? Well, let me ask you. 12:47 is how many minutes after 12:30?
17.
Now, you recall a call at 12:30, the only call, the first call, between Catherine Magbanowa and Sigfredo Garcia? It's an
Yes.
important call in this case.
Yes, sir.
And that call happens at 12:30, correct?
Yes, sir.
12:30 is before Wendy Adelson is pinging on this cell site, right?
That's correct.
And again, you say Wendy Adelson, that cell site could be picked up from over here, right?
It could, yes.
But it could also be picked up by where the cell site is, right?
That's correct.
Do you know if there are other cell sites closer in this area?
There are not between those two, no.
There aren't.
No, sir.
This is the closest cell site to Professor Markel's house?
No, it's not the closest cell site. There are, between the two cell sites that you're referencing there are no other cell sites between those two.
Let me rephrase the question. I wasn't precise. There are closer cell sites to Professor Markel's house than this cell site here, correct?
That's correct.
Now, throughout the afternoon of July 18th, there are very few text messages between Charlie Adelson and anyone else, right?
I don't recall how many there are.
Do you recall that people are texting him, and when he's getting back, he's saying, I'm in a lot of surgeries, that he had a lot of surgeries that day?
Again, I don't recall the specifics of each message.
Do you recall, though, that there are several text messages between him and his friend Mike about dinner that night, and there's one text message between him and Katie confirming that he is going to go to dinner with her that night?
I believe that's correct.
By the way, the text messages between Charlie and anyone that day, nothing out of the ordinary, right?
Nothing that I recall, no.
Nothing that you thought were important enough during the day. I'm not talking about the night. Nothing that you thought was important enough to put on your PowerPoint, right?
Correct.
Do you recall there being one phone call with Katie in the afternoon?
Afternoon of the 18th?
The 18th, I believe it was at give or take 1:24 p.m.
I believe that's correct. If you no longer need this, I can bring it down and confirm.
Let me turn this off. And that call occurred after a text message where she said that her phone was dying?
I don't recall that specific message, but
Do you recall her texting him about asking him how work was?
yes,
And do you recall that he didn't get back to her for a while?
correct.
And do you recall that there's text messages indicating that he worked late that evening?
Yes, he indicates that he was just finishing work around 8:20, 8:23.
Now, at some point, he gets a text message from his mother, correct?
Yes,
And that is after Wendy Adelson has called Donna Adelson from the police station?
I believe so, yes.
And do you recall what the text message said?
Call us as soon as possible, ASAP.
And after that, did you see a phone call where he communicated with Donna Adelson? Had a call with Donna Adelson?
There is an outgoing call at 8:29, 7:13. So yes, there are calls between them, yes.
And there's one call that lasts a little bit longer?
Yes, there's a 6-minute and 31-second call. There's a 5-minute and 47-second call.
Okay. And after that call, are there text messages where he's telling people that he doesn't feel good? I think you showed them.
Yes,
And there's a call after that point to Katie. Is that fair to say?
there is, yes.
Okay. Now, you talked about a couple. Katie texts him at 6:01 p.m. before he's spoken to his mom, right? It's on one of your sheets. I'll show you. So that you
Yes, there's a couple of texts before then.
Okay. And those texts are about work, right?
Correct.
Including at 6:01, before he's heard from his mom, he's about to start a big case.
Correct.
He's doing surgery.
I would assume so, yes.
And at 8:23, he texts her back. She asks if he's at work. And he texts her back and he says, just finishing, I'm not really feeling good. Maybe we can just hang out at my house.
Correct.
And that would be consistent that text was after he heard whatever he heard from Donna Adelson, correct?
Correct.
Now, what you see on your map of Katie's whereabouts then is that she's a little bit all over the place, right? Meaning her phone is a little bit all over the place. It's traveling.
Yes.
And it's going to different locations.
I believe that for the period of time we're talking, her handset is consistent with leaving her residence and traveling to Mr. Rivera's residence.
Do you know if her handset went to her friend Yindra's residence, where she was hoping to get a babysitter last minute?
Certainly. So there was calls, communications with Yindra, and her residence is on the way to Mr. Rivera's. So there was certainly an opportunity for her to be able to stop.
And on those calls, or through your investigation, you learned that Catherine McVanderwell was in a pinch because she didn't have a babysitter, right?
I believe that's correct.
And so she was scrambling to find someone who could watch her kids.
Yes.
And she needed a babysitter because she needed to go that evening to Charlie Adelson's residence, right?
I don't know if she needed to go, but it appeared to be the plan.
Well, there wasn't really Rich Rock. Now, you have a chart where you show Charlie Adelson leaving Jupiter. I know their estimations, but he's driving south at around 9:19 p.m.
That's correct.
Okay. And Jupiter was where he was working that day?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And you have him arriving at his house at approximately 9:40 p.m., give or take.
Yes, I believe that's the first event with location that would be consistent with his house.
And through your investigation, you know where he lives, right?
Yes.
You know that he lives in an area that is a stone's throw from the turnpike, right?
Correct.
Like, I mean, when I say a stone's throw from the turnpike, you can literally throw a stone and hit the turnpike, right?
Yes.
And you understand that when you're going to Tallahassee from Miami, the most direct route, you like routes, I know that. The most direct route is to take the turnpike, right?
It would be, yes.
Okay. And you know at that point in time, Donna and Harvey Adelson were living in Miami part-time.
Yes.
So I want to take you to these text messages between Donna and Charlie. Do you have them in front of you?
I will in just a second.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So at 8:59 p.m., Donna says, outside your house.
Correct.
Now, you don't know from that text whether she's actually at his house or on the turnpike outside his house, right?
From that text message alone, no.
Okay. And no SunPass records were ever taken to show her actually getting off the turnpike to go to his house, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
And I can't get those records today, right?
Again, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Now, that text outside your house is at 8:59 p.m. How many minutes later does Charlie...
Yeah, what is the point of this? It's, I mean, the questions are so irrelevant that there's really nothing to even comment on. I'm kind of done taking it in, you know. Let's see what the very next question is, and we'll talk about it. Ready? Are you ready for some really relevant point from Mr. Rashbaum?
Charlie Adelson respond to Donna?
About 20 minutes.
So his text back is 20 minutes later, right?
Yes.
So now you're at, my math is not good, but you're at 9:19 p.m., right?
Correct.
And what does he say in his response?
10 minutes.
And you take that to mean that he's still 10 minutes away, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, by the text messages...
Yeah, which is so obviously what it is.
You know that Donna and Harvey Adelson arrived in Orlando at around 1:11 a.m., correct?
I believe that's correct.
Did you do that same analysis that you did with Wendy's route as to whether they could have gotten to Orlando at that time had they waited at Charlie's house for 30 minutes and then dropped off money and done whatever else the state says that they did with him?
In looking at their cell site locations very briefly, it is consistent with them traveling at least by his residence, and not knowing how long or how lengthy of a stop it would have been with the cell sites and the general locations, I certainly could not exclude them having stopped. If it were 5 minutes, then it doesn't make that drive. Obviously, they did reach Orlando when they did. 5 minutes one way or the other would not. I could not deduce that from the cell site records.
But it's not 5 minutes. It's 20 minutes plus 10 minutes,
Correct.
plus whatever amount of time they would have stopped.
Correct.
Your testimony is that if they left Charlie...
Rashbaum's target here is to make it seem like these text messages do not show that Donna was stopping by Charlie's house, which was the money drop, right? That they were already in Orlando, or what? I mean, he's so bad at making a point that I really don't even know. I really don't even know. There is no point.
Adelson's house at 9:30. They only stopped for 1 minute. Your testimony is that they could have made it to Orlando by 1:11?
I did not analyze the amount of time that travel for that. I certainly can. And again, not by communication, but by cell site location. I certainly could.
The cell site location doesn't show them at Charlie's house, right?
No.
By the way, do you remember what the weather was like that day?
I do not.
Do you remember what the weather was like back on July 18th? 11 years ago? Do you remember? 9 years ago at this point?
Let's go to July 19th. Now, you did some analysis regarding the money drop and who was at different locations during the money drop, right?
Yes,
Charlie Adelson was nowhere near that location, right?
that's correct.
In fact, during your investigation, you can see that Charlie Adelson didn't leave his house for 24 hours, almost 24 hours, right?
I believe that's correct.
By the way, during your investigation, you can see text messages where people were trying to go out with Charlie that day, right?
I believe so, yes.
And he was refusing, right?
Correct.
He was telling people that he was taking naps and didn't feel well. Do you remember that?
Yes.
By the way, during your investigation, are you aware that within 3 weeks, Charlie Adelson spent $3,000 of his money buying camera equipment for his house?
I'm not aware of that.
Did you see that in the text messages?
I don't recall that.
You don't recall that in the text messages? Anywhere in the text messages?
I don't.
Okay. Now, you brought up a series of text messages between Charlie and Catherine Magbanawa the next day regarding the weather outside.
Correct.
You have no context for those text messages, right? You don't know what those text messages are about, right?
Only by their content.
Now, the government put in a whole host of text messages through you, right?
Yes.
Do you recall text messages between Charlie and his mom when they were leaving Tallahassee
On which day?
on the 21st?
I believe so, yes.
Do you recall what those text messages said?
I do not. Again, I can certainly look at them.
Can you look at text messages on 7/21 at around 12 o'clock p.m.? And then again at 12:18 p.m.?
I'm sorry, on the 21st?
Yes. Would you like me to approach with them? Will that help you?
You can, I'll confirm. Are you referring to the we all do, we just have to be strong?
That's on the at 12:18,
Yes.
and then at 12.
Yes.
And then this one right here.
Yes.
Did Charlie Adelson indicate to his mom in these text messages his feelings about what had happened?
There is a message that says, "I feel so bad for them."
Did Donna Adelson respond to Charlie about how the family had to be in response?
She did.
Did she say what Wendy needed?
Her message is that we just have to be strong and supportive. They need family right now. Just got in car now. Got in car now.
Those text messages weren't in your PowerPoint, right?
They were not.
Now, there are a bunch of texts that were included after July 18 between Charlie and Katie showing that they had a nice relationship. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Do you have any idea
that,
the context of any of those texts, why Charlie was being nice to Katie?
I only have the content of the messages themselves.
Fair enough. The state also showed you a bunch of texts related to Wendy Adelson's divorce. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And during those texts, you can see that Donna Adelson in particular is upset.
Yes.
At least that's what the messages say.
Correct.
Are most of the messages initiated by Donna Adelson or Charlie Adelson?
I believe most by Donna.
There's a text on March 4th, 2014 in your PowerPoint where Donna says 37 miles to Gainesville. I can't talk now, but I'll text you before we stop in Gainesville where I can go to the bathroom and have a moment of privacy. Then I'll call. Please pick up because I have very limited alone time today. Erase this text after you read it. First of all, did Charlie Adelson erase the text?
Most of his text messages, that's difficult to determine from the iCloud return, whether they've been deleted or not.
This text you can tell was not deleted, correct?
I would have to review that real quick.
I'll move on. It's okay. Are you aware that Donna Adelson was with Harvey Adelson on their way to back from Tallahassee?
I would deduce that based on the content of the messages.
Okay. And are you aware that they were throwing a surprise party for Harvey Adelson?
I know they were throwing a party.
Well, have you seen the invitation in your investigation where it's a surprise party?
I have not.
Could this text be about the surprise party?
It could. Sorry.
Please wait for the objection to be ruled on, Sergeant.
Apologies.
Well, the next text, we don't have to speculate. Donna says, we'll stop in 5 minutes and I can speak to you privately about Dad's birthday gift when I'm out of the car. Who would be in the car with Donna?
Harvey.
Jesus
And by the
Christ,
way,
can you believe
this
this?
is-
I mean, this is just, it's almost like some kind of conceptual art piece, isn't it? This guy, this fucking lawyer, is up here doing a lengthy cross-examination of a key witness and custodian of evidence in the state's case against his clients. And I just don't know what to fucking infer from this, because what are these questions? You know, what should a cross-examination be? A cross-examination should ultimately call into question the assertions made by opposing counsel. What were the assertions made by the prosecution in this with this witness? Well, What was it ultimately? It's kind of difficult to remember. I mean, when we watched Sarah Dugan's direct examination, remember I said that I felt that it was a little bit too, you know, it didn't really involve the story. You know, there were a lot of lists and a lot of, and this call happened at this time, right? And that was served by this cell tower, right? It was basically showing patterns of communication, locations of where individuals were communicating from and at what times. Very clinical, very scientific. I don't know if scientific, very technical, very clinical and technical, right? Not much of a, those clinical technical observations and, elements of the testimony painted a picture when we put it up against other witnesses, right? Up against Wendy, you know. I mean, what should Daniel Rashbaum be doing here with this witness? Personally, I don't think he should have questioned him anywhere near this amount of time. There was that one thing he said at the beginning of Cross where it was like, the information that you're here to testify about today, you had the same information back in 2015 or 16, whenever it was. I think it was one of those years. And you haven't had any additional information sent to you since then. You know, the point he's making is obviously based on the information that Sergeant Corbett had for all those years prior to Charlie's arrest, that the state didn't feel that was sufficient enough to arrest him, which is bullshit anyway. The state can arrest you when they want, right? Especially for a murder charge with no statute of limitations. Daniel Rashbaum really should have not even bothered with this witness. There's hardly any opinion evidence to pull down. There's no, with a witness like Sanford, who also is running an investigation, but Sanford seems more like, he's based his... He's seeking an opinion based on understanding the people. All Sergeant Corbett is doing is understanding cell towers, where the phone was, what tower was serving that device at that time when that call was made to who. That's all. It's a fucking spreadsheet. He is a talking spreadsheet. And Daniel Rashbaum should have just asked him maybe 2 questions and then left it and gone on to a witness that he can reshape and so on. There's nothing to reshape here.
1 month or so before the text we talked about earlier where Charlie's getting a caterer for paella for the birthday?
I believe so, yes.
And by the way, that text regarding the caterer, that's on June 6th, correct?
I believe so, yes.
In your
Correct.
PowerPoint, you don't have that text, but you have a text on June 7th, the very next day.
Yes.
And Charlie says, have fun still working on Dad's birthday present.
Correct.
That's 1 day after he talked to his mom about the caterer, correct?
Yes.
What do you need to work on? What do you need to work on for a caterer? You phone the caterer and you say, we want you to come with your paella kitchen. Bring your big fucking paella dish and your big wooden spoon and your yellow rice and your fucking shrimp and mussels and you fucking put it in the fucking pan and you serve it in bowls. That's what we want. On this date. Still working on Dad's gift. On Dad's big birthday gift. His secret gift. Still working on that paella, chef. It's so obviously about the murder. I mean, you should just stay away from that.
There's no mention about a murder on this text, right?
That's correct.
There's no mention the day before about a murder, right?
That's correct.
There's mention about a caterer the day before.
There is.
I have one moment, Your Honor, to set this up.
Take your time.
This would be the scariest part for me. Is there a way that I get control now? Yeah, it's plugged in. Okay. So,
And Judge, I'm going to object to showing juries.
Oh. sorry.
Please shut that down.
So you've gone through all the call records that you provided in this case, right?
At some point, yes.
Okay. And so you're familiar with patterns of calls on days other than the days that you provided in your PowerPoint, correct?
Yes.
Judge, I move in demonstrative exhibit B at this point in time.
Any objection from the state?
Yes, sir. I think that the witness would need to be able to say that this is accurate compared to the records in the case.
Mr. Rashbaum, please show the exhibit to the witness so that way he can verify the accuracy.
If I press this witness button, it just goes to him.
No, that's what's on his.
Okay, I'll bring it up. Just May 2nd.
Okay. If this was the document provided previously, I have had a very limited amount of time to look at it. There are some things, I've made a few notes. There are some inconsistencies with it that I could probably talk about some of, but I have not had a chance to review the entire thing, and it would take some time.
Judge, may we go sidebar?
You may.
Fucking sidebar. Prick. Oh, Ruth's back.
Records for May 2nd, 2014.
Yes, sir.
And this was a non-event day, right?
I don't know.
Okay. Not an event that you were told by the state to look at, right?
Correct.
And it's one of the first days of records that we have in this case, right?
Correct.
And these are the subjects that you were looking at for the event days that you looked at with the state, right?
Yes.
And you have a call from Charlie to Katie at 12 in the morning that day, right? 16-minute call?
That's correct.
And you have another call at 12:19 for 3 minutes and 45 seconds.
Correct.
Pretty much directly after each other, right?
Yes.
And then you have a call between Katie and Sigfredo Garcia at 6:42 in the morning for 36 minutes.
That's correct.
And then you have a call at 7:18 in the morning between Katie and Sigfredo, right?
Yes.
And then you have a call between Katie and Sigfredo at 8:36 in the morning, right?
No. That's actually,
I'll move on from that one.
it's a
The
text
witness
message.
isn't permitted to explain. Go ahead,
Fair
sir.
enough.
That is a text message from her records that's reported in Central Time. So
Fair enough. Text message, not a call.
At 9:36. Yes.
Okay. Then you have a call from Harvey to Donna at 8:52 in the morning.
That's correct.
Then you have a call from Donna to Harvey at 9:10 in the morning.
Yes.
Then you have a call from Charlie to Donna at 9:25 in the morning.
Yes.
Then you have Katie calls Sigfredo 3 times, 9:32 to 9:34 a.m.
Yes.
Then Charlie calls Katie, 9:34 a.m.
Yes.
Then Charlie calls Donna, 9:35 a.m.
Correct.
Then Katie texts Sigfredo, 9:36 a.m.
Correct.
Then Katie calls Charlie twice.
I don't show both of those calls, but there's at least one, yes.
Please move on.
Then Charlie calls Katie twice.
Yeah, please move on.
I show one at 9:40, a return call at 9:43. Yes, there is the outgoing at 9:44. Yes.
Oops. Then Charlie texts Katie at 10:19.
I believe that's correct, yes.
Katie texts Charlie at 10:42.
I believe that's correct.
Harvey calls Donna at 11:04.
Believe me, guys, I'm as frustrated as everybody. More so. More so. This is unbelievable. But it's important for us to really let this sink in. How bad this is.
That's correct.
We can do it. We'll get through it.
Donna texts Harvey 3 times between 12:29 and 1:23.
That's correct.
Donna calls Harvey at 1:27.
Correct.
Sigfredo calls Katie at 1:45.
I do not show that call.
I'll move on. Harvey calls Donna at 3:20.
At 1:53?
Yes.
Yes, at 1:53.
I'm sorry, at 1:53. I apologize. Wendy texts Charlie at 2:33.
Yes.
And this goes on, right? You've seen this exhibit?
Yes.
Sigfredo calls Katie twice at 11:51 and 12:29 in the morning. It's the last activity of the day.
I do not show those on. You still on the second?
It bleeds over to the next day. That's okay. We'll move on.
What the fuck?
And if we go to May 7th, another random day, you had a chance to look through it. Similar phone activity, right?
There is, yes.
May I have one moment, Your Honor?
Take your time.
If we had the records in January, February, or March, you don't know if those patterns would be any different, right?
I do not.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Yeah, sit the fuck down, man. Right, come on, Sarah. Hit it home, baby.
When defense first began asking you questions, they talked about duplication. In the presentation that you showed the jury yesterday, have all of the duplicates been taken out of that presentation?
Yes. For all the call summaries, went and looked at each call and looked at the recipient's records to see if there was indications of voicemail, routing, and did my best effort to remove anything that was not an individual completed actual communication.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're not seeing twice of every single event in your presentation.
The only place there would be duplicates would be like in frequency reports.
Oh, it's just instantly feel better looking at Sarah
individual completed actual communication.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're not seeing twice of every single.
Oh, we just love you, Sarah. Look at you. You're so nice.
Event in your presentation.
The only place there would be duplicates would be like in a frequency report or when things were tallied, because those are across thousands of records. So in those, the duplicates may be there, but in frequencies, we're kind of looking at relevance, and those duplicates duplicate themselves across all the callers. But in any of the summaries or any of the individual call patterns, we are looking at just individual events.
And when you say summaries and call patterns, you mean those flurries where we show the data from the records followed by kind of like the talking heads with the arrows?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, the July 2nd message where we made a mistake and there was the Catherine McBanwell was the one that was calling Sigfredo an effing pussy. Okay,
Yes.
That was her saying that, not Charlie Adelson.
Correct.
Okay, were you trying to put some of these messages into the presentation this weekend while working some 12-hour shifts?
Yes, I was.
Okay, so, but in that message, is Catherine McBanwell letting Charlie Adelson know that Garcia is this scary, violent man?
It would not seem that.
She's calling him a P word.
Yes, she is.
Okay. Or telling Charlie Adelson that Sigfredo Garcia is one.
Correct.
Okay. And she's also saying that Garcia's actions are childish.
Correct.
I just want to make it clear, for the car rental in June when Sigfredo Garcia rented that silver Nissan sedan, we have no indications that Charlie Adelson was physically there at the rental location or anything like that, right?
We do not.
Okay. What your testimony was that Catherine McBanwell was on the phone with Charlie Adelson while she was consistent with being at Comfort Rental, and then they had that 25-minute call on her way home from Comfort Rental.
That's correct.
Okay. Just in general, when a person calls a landline, is that a suspicious thing?
It is not.
Okay. Is the reason that this Charlie Adelson's calls to his parents' landline, did that stand out to investigators because Charlie Adelson was the person on the wiretaps talking about calling people back to a landline or on a landline?
That's correct.
Like Erica in the office. Okay, I'm going to give you a call back on our landline. We're on the phone right now, and the reception is perfect, but I'm going to call you back on our landline. And don't give the FBI any records. It was innocent. It wasn't his office. It was his father's office. He doesn't know where anything is. Maybe if he gives you a call back on a landline, he'll remember.
The July 6th text message between Wendy Adelson and Dan Markell, you said it's normal for co-parents to text about children and visitation schedules. You would expect that, right?
I would, yes.
Is the reason that that message in particular stood out to investigators, is that because of the date range Wendy Adelson referenced in that text message?
That's correct.
And the date range that she referenced, was that the week of Dan Markell's murder, the 14th through the 18th?
It was, yes.
And during that date range, the 15th you said was when the Prius was rented?
Correct.
The 16th you said was the travel to Tallahassee?
Yes.
You said the 17th was the surveillance of Dan Markell?
Yes.
And the 18th was the murder?
Correct.
Defense asked you, this Prius, it was green, right? You know, it wasn't silver. Was the actual color of the Toyota Prius silver pine mica?
I believe that's correct. I referenced it as a metallic mint green.
Okay. And this was a four-door sedan?
Yes.
We saw, both in your presentation with the state and when defense had an opportunity to ask you questions, Wendy's cell site locations when she's on the phone on the day of the murder from her home down to ABC Liquors. Those circles that were on the screen, those are the cell site locations that she's communicating with, right? Not her locations.
Absolutely. I hope that's clear. Those are the locations of the cell towers that her handset
Tiffany
is
Nickel.
wirelessly communicating.
And that cell site that she's communicating with at 12:35 when she's on her way to the liquor store, that cell site services the area of Trescott Drive.
It could, yes.
Okay. And so does when she's down on her way a little south of there to the liquor store. That cell site services that area.
Yes.
Okay. And the reason that her cell site locations, investigators looked at those, was based on Officer Brandon reporting seeing a vehicle much like hers come up to the crime scene around that hour of day on the day of the murder.
Correct.
based on the data, could her cell site location be consistent with her going up to the roadblock as Officer Brandon described?
It could, yes.
Defense asked you about, there was also a message in all of the defendant's iCloud where, and he showed you the message, his mother, Donna Adelson, wanted him to send her info, as in like the name or number of a caterer.
Yes.
Okay. Now, in that message that the defense showed you, she said the word caterer, right? Not birthday gift or birthday present?
Correct.
And did that text message say to erase it after he reads it?
It did, yes.
I'm sorry, the caterer message that the defense showed you just now?
I'm sorry.
I'm talking about the caterer message that the defense showed you today.
And you're asking if that's the one that had the delete?
Right.
It did not.
Okay. So she says, can you send me the info for a caterer? And then it didn't say delete this after reading or anything like that.
That's correct.
And it didn't say anything about a birthday gift or a birthday present in that message?
In that message, no.
Okay. In the messages that we showed the jury yesterday from March 4th, she says delete this after reading when she says she wants to make a private call to him when she gets to Gainesville when she's in the bathroom. That's the one that says delete after reading?
That's correct.
Okay. And in the follow-up message a few minutes later, she says it's about Dad's birthday gift?
Yes.
And then in June, 3 months later, after the June trip to Tallahassee by the shooters, she says...
Oh, congratulations, Tiffany. That's nice.
He says he's still working on the birthday gift for Dad, and she says, I know you'll come through for me.
That's correct.
Okay. And did they talk about a birthday gift in that exchange or a birthday present, or do they talk about a caterer?
Present.
On July 18th, the day of Dan Martell's murder, does Charlie Adelson's statement that he's not feeling well, that text comes after a call with Donna Adelson, but does it come before Catherine McBanois comes to his house that night?
It does, yes.
That same night on July 18th, in the message from Donna Adelson to Charlie Adelson, does she say she's outside his house?
It says outside your house, yes.
Okay. Does it say I'm on the turnpike near your house?
It does not.
When she says she's outside his house, I mean, I guess we don't know how long she stayed, whether she...
Objection, Your Honor.
What's the objection?
Foundation.
All right, Mr. Dugan, if you can clean up the foundation on this issue.
From the messages alone, do we know how long she stayed there?
Objection, Your Honor. Foundation.
Overruled. She's going to lay the foundation.
We do not.
Okay. From the messages alone, do we know if she left something in his house for him?
We do not.
All we know is she said she's outside his house, and he says 10 minutes.
Correct.
So in the presentation yesterday, we showed the communication between the parties, meaning the heads and the arrows, on days that we know are significant days in this investigation, right? Days.
Correct.
Okay. Defense showed you some communication, they say, on random days, May 2nd and May 7th, I believe it was. I want to look at, just briefly, the divorce file in this case. So the divorce file in this case is already in evidence. I want to show you a couple of things from that divorce file that were going on during that time, around the time of the beginning of May. All right. Now, this document, does this appear to have been filed toward the end of April 24th, 2014?
Yes.
Okay. And this says former husband, would that be Dan Markell?
Yes.
Former husband's second request to produce to former wife?
Yes.
Okay, and Dan Markell is requesting Wendy Adelson to produce for inspection and copy the following documents. And then if you go over to page 4, here are his requests. And he wants her employment contract, her pay stubs, showing all her.
What do we see here? 2. Former wife's pay stubs from Florida State University from December 7th, 2012 through the most recent pay stub received through the date of responding to this second request to produce. 3. Pay stubs and or other documents evidencing income earned by the former wife from any and all sources in addition to Florida State University from January 1st, 2012 through the date of responding to this second notice of produce. 4. Former wife's regions checking account statement from December 11th, 2012 through the most recent. Fucking hell. Can you imagine reading thousands of pages of this? Yeah. Federal income tax return, including all schedule. Blah 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 blah. Fuck me. How dry.
Her checking account statements, her income tax returns, the TIAA CREF retirement account information, any information about removing funds from Schwab accounts, a detailed list of all of the items, marital items she may have taken from the home. That was his request in April of 2014, April 24th?
Yes.
Okay. And then
We will be reading some of the divorce
on May 2nd
filings soon.
of 2014,
Some of them are quite good,
that would
actually.
have been the first day of messages that the defense showed today, right?
Yes.
Or not messages, communication back and forth.
Yes.
Okay. On May 2nd, 2014, on this day, Dan Markell is moving to compel Wendy Adelson. So he's asking the court to basically force or order Wendy Adelson to respond to that motion, to his second request to produce. That motion that was filed on April 24th.
Correct.
Okay. Also on May 2nd, 2014, does it appear that Wendy Adelson was informed that a hearing was set on Dan Markell's motion to compel?
Yes.
Okay, and the hearing was set on the 2nd, and the hearing was supposed to be, though, on, it appears to be May 6th?
Correct.
Okay, on May 5th, Dan Markell files a memorandum of authorities to enforce the marital settlement agreement and motions for sanctions. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just gonna try to get through this. Looks like a pretty lengthy motion. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
We call her
So on May 7th,
Flaka.
after
Nibbly
that
darling.
motion is filed by Dan Markell on May 7th, 2014.
Flaka.
Does Wendy Adelson's attorney then motion the court to be able to withdraw as her counsel?
Yes.
Okay. So on May 7th, that was the second day of communication that the defense showed today.
Correct.
Her attorney is trying to now withdraw from her case.
Correct.
I love that her attorney tried to withdraw from the case, or did withdraw. You know, because she was obviously convinced to do something underhanded, convinced that it would all be okay, that Markel would back off if we just keep putting pressure on him. But, you know, I think Markel's downfall is that he was just too honorable and true to himself, right? That he wouldn't be strong-armed by these bullies. It cost him his life, unfortunately. But he maintained his dignity.
So on both May 2nd and May 7th, there were, even though there wasn't a trip to Tallahassee at that time by the shooters, there were significant events going on in the divorce in this case. Doesn't it seem so?
It does, yes.
All right. And those days, May 2nd and May 7th, they were days before these June and July trips to Tallahassee where the shooters drove up to kill Dan Markel.
Correct.
So, I mean, could these have been days where there was some discussion about the plan to kill Dan Markel? Okay, I'll move on. I want to show you what I'm going to mark as states 129, A and B.
I think there's like 2 minutes left. Ooh, Veronica's got another comment. She says, Metrix. Apologies if you've covered this. I've only been following the channel for a week. After our chat about Wendy, I'm curious what your take on everyone's favorite question. Will she be arrested? Yes. Yes. I'm at a loss as to why she hasn't already. And I don't buy this thing about the state need her to testify in Donna's trial, and they don't want to risk her pleading the fifth. So they, you know, Wendy could get hit by a bus tomorrow and she wouldn't be testifying in Donna's trial, and it would be no less likely that Donna would be convicted. That's the leading reason that the word around the campfire believes is why Wendy hasn't been arrested. And I don't see how that's true. Wendy has not been a major instrument in any of the 3 prosecutions that have happened so far. Okay, she was able to verify some emails from Donna. Leslie brought that up to us last week, which is true, and that was relevant. I wouldn't call it linchpin material, you know. Personally, I don't believe that Wendy has been useful as far as it goes to securing the prosecutions that have happened so far. And I don't expect her to be useful in Donna's prosecution. Certainly not to the extent that would warrant allowing her to remain free for all of this time. The thing that I find most interesting about it is how much Georgia Kappelman has been able to get acquainted with Wendy as she has testified in these trials. It's the in many ways, it's the interrogation that never happened. Georgia Kappelman has been able to take the measure of Wendy and to test. You know, it's kind of like rapport building, but not building rapport. It's more like monitoring how Wendy reacts, watching her story change, evolve, and, you know, seeing what buttons she has to press and so on. I think when Georgia's certainly used the situation, if it's not by design, she's certainly benefited. Georgia Kappelman has benefited from her exposure to Wendy. The last 3 trials that Georgia has examined Wendy, of course, that gives valuable insight that Georgia will be able to use when she does prosecute Wendy. If Georgia Kappelman had never had the opportunity to speak to Wendy in these examinations, and then Wendy were arrested and tried and questioned, it would be very different, wouldn't it? Now, whether that's a tactic of let's keep her free so I can examine her and get to know this psycho, that doesn't seem very realistic. You know, there's a few standing theories as to why she hasn't been arrested, and none of them really complete or satisfy logic completely. None of them satisfy logic completely. You know, there's lots of half reasons where you go, well, yeah, but would they really just let her remain free for all this time for that alone? You know, another thing people say is, well, they don't have enough evidence. I think they do. I think they do. And I don't think they're getting any more. It's been 11 years. Anyway, I think she will be arrested. I think Georgia Kappelman, professionally and personally, will not let that go. And it might not be solely Georgia's decision, but she certainly got influence among the committee that would be making that decision. We certainly know what the Markells have to say over this. It would be absolutely criminal to not arrest her. I think the state attorney's office would probably be humiliated if they didn't arrest her. So, if it's going to happen, it'll happen after Donna's trial. There's also questions and speculations about Harvey's arrest. Personally, the guy's 82 years old. You arrest him now, he'll die before he's on trial. put a guy in his almost mid-80s living in jail conditions with a jail diet. I mean, why not do it anyway? Let him die in jail. But Wendy's the youngest. She's the one that will pay the most in terms of the number of years behind bars. She's the most culpable. She's the person that benefited the most. I believe she was the initial instigator that took it into this drastic direction. So yeah, I think she will be arrested. Hi, Michelle and Brian. Wendy's a lot more controlled than Amber Heard. Is that it? Please let that be it.
Everyone can be seated. Sergeant, if you need to take a break, you can sit down.
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Rashbaum, does your client need to use the restroom?
No.
No. We'll be in recess until 11:30.
Okay, next we've got McLean, whatever, the guy that enhanced the Dolce Vita recording, covert recording of Katie and Charlie's conversation in Dolce Vita. Man, that was a long one. That was hard to get through. Thanks for sticking with us, guys. I mean, it is kind of the point that it's boring. It demonstrates how utterly flawed and hopeless this case was. How far out of reach it was to secure a not guilty verdict. And Wendy knew that. Obviously, she knew that. Okay, we're not moving on today. We're going to stare at the Great Seal of the state of Florida and say goodnight. And we'll be back. We'll be back tomorrow with hopefully some I think, Sergeant Chris Corbett was a particularly long witness. He's been on for 2 fucking days here. So now we're moving on to some shorter witnesses. We've got Pat Samford coming up. He's going to be quite lengthy, but, it's a little bit more. No fault to Sergeant Corbett, of course, but he is a scientific witness. It's a lot of reading of data, and Rashbaum doing that long cross was just a fucking nightmare. You'll have to excuse me while I go into the other room and take my own life. Man, that was just too much. Anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for being here, sticking with us. Supporters, commenters, super commenters, people that like the video, please do like the video on your way out. That helps us out a great deal. Just got to keep doing this until we're through with Charlie's trial. But as we're moving through, I got a full fucking notebook full of fucking notes for some great concept videos. That we're picking up. Wendy's house we've got to talk about. All sorts of stuff. I've just got a whole. Wish you could see my notes. They look really cool, actually. But anyway, no, great stuff is coming as well, guys. And don't forget, we're soon to be seeing Charlie Adelson himself on the stand. That never gets old. That's the single best thing about this trial, is that we get to hear from him himself for quite a while, right? More than a full day he's on the stand for. So that's something to look forward to. Okay, guys, we're going to go. We're going to see you later. We're going to see you tomorrow. Take it easy. Don't be an Adelson. Have a safe drive home and a good night's rest. Catch you later, guys. Adios.